hate Donald Trump thing really got big. Donald Trump was put in because he had handled so many of his own bankruptcies. The first thing he had to do was handle the whole dissolution of USA.
Yeah.
You know,
He was put in
he was put in to handle the bankruptcy and be the front man.
because he's a master of bankruptcies. Wow, it's that simple.
Yeah, and they filed in Florida.
Wow.
The bankruptcy filing you could see, this stuff you could see online. Um, if you took a cruise, like I wish you could take a cruise through D.C. According to all the contacts I have, D.C. is shut down.
Oh, really? Well, I
Yeah.
can go there.
The administration try to go there and walk through the streets
Okay.
because the administration, there's a perfect White House. Tyler Perry has been the right arm of the film machine for the Biden regime. It's called in my circles.
Wow.
The Biden regime, in concert with the Communist China Party of China.
Wow.
Not any socialists in America that are just trying to make things better, but the real political huge machine, Communist China, that, for example, you know, Tiananmen Square and all these different revolutions the Chinese young people tried to start, squashed. I mean,
I'm very light sensitive, sorry.
that's
Alien.
great you killed that. Yeah.
Very alien.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Did you notice how they changed all our bulbs? It's even hard to get a regular bulb anymore.
Well, we're like plants. We want sunlight and water. We'll take some.
Yeah.
We'll take what we can get.
Yeah, we are like plants.
Yeah, we're very similar to them. I'm reading this book, Breaking Open the Head, about psychedelics. Let's talk about ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is who speaks for all the plants. They learn a lot about plants from ayahuasca, yeah.
And you get the whole resonance, and you're going to get it, of color and sound. When Elena and I, stop me if I tell you this, but we were with Cedar in Maine.
Uh-huh.
And Cedar was about 6.
Yep.
And he was really into computers.
Uh-huh.
And he was in his room as if, let's say Cedar was behind this wall at a desk.
Uh-huh.
Right? This was before he got his ears done. Cedar couldn't hear a thing.
Wow.
We were talking. Elena and I were talking, and we were talking quite loud because Elena got into a thing of kind of shouting for him, you know.
Uh-huh, right.
Well, he comes out of the room and he starts signing to her and getting involved in the conversation, right where he had interrupted us, telling us, you know, what he thought about this, right? He's signing all this stuff.
Wow.
He's a great signer.
Yeah.
That's why I went to New Mexico to study sign language. He asked me to. He used to come and put his hands on my back when I played guitar, and he was like in heaven. She said he loves the vibration through your back, you know.
Wow.
Very sensitive. But anyway, comes out and tells us all. And Lena looks at me like she's seen a ghost, and we go, look, was there any way he could have possibly... Because you see, it was not just that he was in a room with this wall. He had a wall there too, and a door like down there. He came out from the room. He told us, she said, I think his mind is so different than ours that he can translate the vibration he felt through the wall.
Wow.
He's been listening to sound so long and translating it in a way he can read. And we just sat there like, fuck. It's just a beautiful thought. You see, human beings are the most... Why do you think all this artificial life wants our DNA and blood and the powers that be? Because free human beings whose brains are still developing, like you said, you're growing, you know, our molecular structure is pretty intact. We're full of amazing powers.
Well, our DNA, we've only unlocked so much of it. The DNA has it all there, yeah. We have a governor on it. Take the governor off.
What we found out, look, there's another thing I wanted to tell you, because it kind of ties in. Was right after I was up in front of the Rosicrucians, I got another call and offered, I think it was $250. But I had to go with Lee to sing, like, for an evening to another place on top of a mountain by some very rich people. See, we became a group that, like, yacht clubs wanted to hire us for their cocktail parties. And there were all these real rich folks that were like, you got to have hooker and ladder. So we go to this beautiful chalet that's built up on top of a mountain way up in northern Vermont. And mostly glass and steel, right? And this was 1972. And We sing for all their guests for Lottie Don. I mean, I saw them the first facelifts I saw in my life, ladies, because I got to see them without their wigs in the morning. In the old days, Griff, they weren't the plastic surgery, a facelift. They would literally staple. They'd pull that. You'd see. That's why the women got into it. But anyway.
What about Valiant Thor? You know Valiant
Oh,
Thor?
I wanted to talk about it, but let me finish this.
Oh yeah,
I'm
sorry,
getting into
sorry.
the punk.
You got it.
I'm
You
not.
got it.
I'm
Sorry.
getting better and better at punk.
Gotcha.
So he asked us to stay afterwards to talk to us. He brings out this old Napoleon brandy, right? We sit there. The guy's name was Prince Serge Gagarin,
And where was this?
Northern Vermont.
Wow.
Okay, way up on top of a mountain.
French guy?
No, Russian. Russian.
With the old Napoleon brandy. Top premium.
Super rich. Okay.
And how'd you meet him?
It's enough for me, baby. That was great. We were on this circuit from playing. Like, I played for years for Robert Ludlum, the guy that wrote The Born Identity.
Yeah, wow.
And I didn't even know it.
Wow.
See, I'm going to tell you this because of the strange way it ties into what then happened to me in the state of Connecticut. But anyway.
Whoa, you see that?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
What was that?
Like this. It's because it gets loose, so too.
This is
Serge
good.
says, and we have the brandy, and just Lee and I are there with his wife. He says, so do you realize who I am? And we look, and I'm like, well, I didn't tell him, but I didn't even know who Federico Franco was.
Yeah,
Francisco
yeah,
Franco, you know. I don't know diddly squat about all you people out here. But I was just like, no, so sorry. He says, well, have you heard of Yuri Gagarin? Again, like, no, Lee and I look at each other.
Yeah.
He goes, oh, you Americans, you amaze me. He says, Yuri, my brother, was the first man on the moon to orbit the Earth. He was the first astronaut. Russia, you know.
Okay.
You Americans don't realize that we beat you.
Right.
But he says, I love your voice, and I'm going to do something for you in the future, and you may not realize it's me. But I'm going to do something big for you because you got a great voice, and I just love you. I love you too, Lee. But he goes, something happens when she starts singing. So then, I must have been 18. No, I guess I was 24. So it was 3 years later. 3 years later, but I was in a whole nother thing. You know, I wasn't with Lee anymore, and I was with this opera company. And my opera director gets a call that I've been chosen as a singer and a soprano to go to the State Library in Danbury and be recorded and televised to be included on a capsule to be launched into space as an introduction of other possible life forms. It was when Carl Sagan was really, he did something called the Golden Record, I think. But I was told that I was going to sing for this thing that was going in it was called a time capsule. And it would go up into a satellite, and they were hoping that it was going to, because this was a time period when there had been a broadcast signal picked up by NASA, where this is a story going around then. You see, I don't really know what's accurate anymore, because everything has been turned around. What we know was true, or thought was true, is often we could deem it false, but what we felt was false, in many cases, like about giants, and then a film, and people being able to tap into their paranormal powers readily in ancient times. We've lost that, but our capacity is still all there. So anyway, I was told this, and I went and I got to hear the song. I did something from another French composer. It's a beautiful aria. But later on, I was told that this is what fascinated me. Extraterrestrial life forms, and the ones particularly that visit Earth, they're crazy about the human voice, but particularly opera, because it's so emotional. Because, and this is their fascination and attraction to human beings, and is being sourced as the possible impulse for the abductions, is trying to study human beings to understand how we can have these emotions that then connect some way into making what's invisible visible, creating coming out of a possibility, moving on to a probability, and then something real that's materialized. Humans only can do this so far. I mean, other life forms can do it, but they don't do it with this emotional resonance. We are so powerful. This is why some life forms that have studied a lot of the mystics, some of our, see, I hesitate to call them human beings because to me they're already cosmic travelers. You may be seeing them in bodies,
Mm-hmm.
but they're
Call them
so advanced.
light beings, star seeds,
Light beings, and
ancient
they're all
aliens.
around us now,
I
right?
call us ancient aliens.
Yes, so that this thing, it's not that they can't make things. A lot of there's some very interesting, and I think we'll be fascinated by some of the things that they've manufactured and manifested. But the fact is that we, for example, we don't need computers really, or as you said, med beds can be kind of viewed as peripheral
Mm-hmm.
or just an accessory
That movie,
to the human body,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Elysium. Did you see that movie with Matt Damon? They had the med beds in that.
No, I didn't. But
Oh,
I
that's
would
your
love
movie.
to.
That's your movie because the rich people had their own little planet, and you could go up there and get the med
Well,
beds.
you see,
It
that's
was all very pretty realistic. There wasn't a big difference between that or going to Malibu or Beverly Hills.
if we think of that as that really all these movies they've been putting out,
Disclosure, normalization.
it's not only disclosure norm, it's like a little manual for how to handle yourself in the new world they're building around
The
us.
manual, yeah.
You know, the big drawback to disclosing to the people, this is why the element of money, so many people are trying to take out of it so that a true disclosure can happen. It has been the profit motive. It's been like, oh my God, we can make so much money with these med beds if everyone doesn't have the technology. But then you could jump right away to energy.
Yeah, just like the water car, solar power, you name it.
Tesla. Why
Yeah.
did they destroy Tesla? What? Look into Wilhelm
Well,
Reich.
Tesla's doing pretty good though, aren't they? I mean, there's a lot of Teslas
No,
out there.
the man that invented that.
Oh,
that
the original
discovered the energy.
Nikolai. Well, because he was giving it away
Nikolai.
for free. They didn't like all that
Right, they
free
had
stuff.
to take him out. These
Yeah.
guys with their, the Rockefellers. What was it now? Like Uncle Arthur loved it that I studied history and had traveled somewhat extensively. You know, you can't really view yourself as a world traveler if you haven't been to the Orient and Asia and Africa. But it wasn't until I got to Europe that I think I got a clear sense of what a kind of a time warp America was in. Because you see, we were brought up to think like these colonial houses down the street that were 170 years old were ancient.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm in Lisbon and seeing these stone houses that are like 1,800 years old. Where people, the same family's been living in them for... The first time when I drove through Lisbon, and once you get through Lisbon and you want to get into the hills to go into Spain, there's a lot of rural roads. And when I was there in 1971, there were people with ox carts, wooden wheels, and women that I thought were 70 or 80 walking beside these oxen. I mean, this was part of the traffic. 1971 group. It was a guy points out to me when I started dating some of the young guys there. And I was like, there's another one of those old ladies. They work really hard. They're like, those ladies are only like 38 or 40. They get old real young here. Because they work so hard. I couldn't believe it. See that if you were there now. But it's 50 years later. But still, I mean, I was shocked at that. And I was shocked when I went to sing at that castle. There I'd been in all these different towns in Spain and Portugal. I had never seen any of these people. It was the elite crew. It was the same people that had the yachts that were in the America's Cup race. For example, I think I told you, I was invited onto Hitler's yacht, his refurbished yacht that was much cherished and probably still is by the Hamburg Yacht Club. But to me, growing up the way I did, even though I didn't have a lot of worldwide awareness and I wasn't sophisticated, I knew Hitler was someone that had harmed a lot of people and that he had been exterminated as far as I'd been told. and that the people that were part of his crew that followed his orders were also punished. Well, everything shifted the day I was in Spain and invited onto Hitler's yacht. And because I was dating guys from Hamburg that were from West Germany. And I started to understand the world is not as we thought. There's another elite group of Nazis. The thrill, the way they spoke about Hitler.
What's going on with Illuminati? Do they
Well,
exist?
the Illuminati are not the Nazis, you know. They, like everything else, the way they co-opted the transgender movement, don't you know? In a way, people think that they started the Illuminati, right? Or even now, the Illuminati are connected to the Freemasons, and the skull. We should do a thing like a tree.
Mm-hmm.
You
Okay.
do for,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to understand that there's a right hand and a left hand in secret societies.
Mm-hmm.
And on Atlantis, and this is why I say our DNA knows that this has happened before, and we don't all want it to happen again. Even the beings off planet, which we'll get to Commander Thor in a minute. But what's happening in the world right now occurred on Atlantis, and it occurred under very similar circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And what occurred was that there were a unified group of call them higher beings, right, within that society and world that had developed, by developing their human potential and keeping the society going, not with money put into any destruction,
Mm-hmm.
and not with time spent plotting against any enemies. There were no enemies in most of the generation time of Atlantis. It was a unified nation. That's why it was able to grow so well. But this crystal was developed, a crystal that was developed by them and had powers and abilities, for example, to, if there should be, for some reason, a severe illness run through the race of Atlanteans, they just had to turn their crystal to certain electromagnetic fields.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like a giant med bed. You see, which all this,
Mm-hmm.
the
Frequency.
Atlantis got really good at dealing with things on an atomic and molecular level.
Atlantis was underwater?
No, it went underwater
Okay.
after the big, because you see, there was a division. What happened was those wise men and women
Mm-hmm.
in Atlantis started talking about ways that this powerful tool they developed, they could heat their all the continent of Atlantis. It's viewed by ufologists because it's become a part of ufology. Okay, now that Bimini, which is east, east of Cuba, okay, and south of Miami, and it's in the Bermuda Triangle there, where the whole Bermuda Triangle happens
Oh.
between those three areas.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So
Miami,
Atlantis is
Cuba.
connected to the Bermuda Triangle.
Well, if you want to, that's where what part of
There are no
the
coincidences.
lost civilization and in Cuba.
Right.
Matter of fact, Castro had to shut down a Russian team of physicists and archaeologists. He brought in physicists and archaeologists when some divers found this site off Havana.
Uh-huh.
And he had to finally drive them out. He was turning into such a world thing, and he realized what he had.
Yeah.
Part of it, it's turned into.
Well,
It's much more secretive than Antarctica now.
Phil Schneider said that.
Oh, he'll tell you.
Atolli Islands were. We said we were testing bombs, but really we were bombing an underwater civilization. He said. Yeah.
And we'll see how it all ties together, because another part of it is this area here. It's the part of Mexico that's along the Gulf of Mexico. The part of Mexico that's along the Gulf of Mexico. That's another part. They found all kinds of pyramids. See, pyramids are always connected to Atlantis. And this is one of the reasons that Edgar Cayce really broke new ground for ufologists and people that are really into Atlantis. Like, in other words, physicists. They're looking for, because you see, there's a debate. some of this technology that we've been referring to as alien or UFO, unidentified, stuff like gravitationally based, and they could be flying along and then disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a whole school of thought that that came out of Egypt
Mm-hmm.
with some of those mathematicians back in the days of the pharaohs, and that the pyramids were made much, much earlier than people think. That the date that they were given, which is I think like BC,
Mm-hmm.
that they're saying it's only been around for 5,000 years. Because ever since the Casey readings, they've had to consider 10 and 12,000 years possibly, 10 or 12,000 BC. But since they discovered this Cappadocia,
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's another underground cavern. You see, one of the reasons the government in that, and I believe it's the Turkish government, shut that down. Ufologists were really into that because crystal tablets were found there, Griff,
Mm-hmm.
that were like big giant carved ice cubes
Mm-hmm.
that you just walked up to them and your energy and your thoughts, the maps would appear. After
Wow.
you'd start, some
Wow.
of these scientists that were in there, they're just looking around
Yeah.
and they're having conversations and stuff is appearing.
Wow. High
You
tech
see?
stuff. Yeah.
Oh, and they're finding out, what they found. I mean, this is where some of the ancient buried wisdom is, you see? Some of it's like not on scrolls and lambskin.
So
It's high tech.
yeah, it's high tech. It's yeah. Yeah.
Like what Casey is saying is that all the Akashic records, which you've into that, if you've the Akashic records, like the whole history of our lives and all our lives
Yeah.
for each person, there's a hall they're recorded in.
Yeah.
Well, do we think for a million years it's just hall after hall after hall? No, let's think in terms of
Now, what
microchips.
do you think about past lives? What have you learned about those?
Oh, I totally think
We've
that.
been to other planets in our past lives. We've been to other dimensions, or
Oh
most of
yeah,
yeah,
and I think most of us now, especially ones
yeah,
like you said, star seeds,
yeah,
the indigo kids, people like Cedar, autistic children.
yeah.
These are different kinds of minds.
The Anunnaki, we hear about them a
Yeah,
lot.
but my point is, we all chose to be here.
Right, right, right.
We're like, I want to do this,
Okay.
and that whole thing about, and it really helps you to jostle a kid when they're feeling grief stricken about the parents they have.
That's true.
To point out that you chose even those parents.
Yeah.
You had a bunch of flash.
Wow.
I mean, isn't it the possibilities, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if any of it I could. There's so many possibilities. I don't want to commit to anyone. I want to let them keep blending.
Right.
Didn't you call it mushroom something?
Oh, the mushroom stew. That's the dance floor.
Yeah,
Everyone
really. I
vibing
mean,
together, flowing
there's
as
a lot.
one. Yeah.
There's so much
That's
going.
existence. You're right. Now, Phil Schneider, you heard about him back in the 90s when you had access to internet, or probably not till more recently?
I got onto Phil Schneider because of Linda Paris. McAllister TV and Linda Paris, she really got into for a while super soldiers. I'll get the names of some of them. But the super soldiers are so interesting. They were guys that are drafted into the Marines or Special Elite Military Corps, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're put through all kinds of grueling stuff. But also they're fooled around with mentally
Mm-hmm.
to see how tough their minds are. They're put through stuff like the truth serum test and all this. And they're also screened and trained and groomed. I'm going to use the word groomed.
Mm-hmm.
To be
Programmed.
ruthless fighters in a battle. Once the enemy's engaged, it's to the death.
Yeah.
And not to put their own lives first. Part of the training is to understand that their body's going to be rebuilt after combat.
Right.
They can, with the technology they've got, it has to happen soon within it. Now, for example, see, what's interesting about this technology, Griff, is you can't take, couldn't have taken my brother Joey, where he'd been deteriorating his organs with the alcohol
Right.
and different stuff that had happened, and then with cancer and stuff. put him in a med bed and get everything good. That's why the doctors were saying to me, live like an athlete. Be real healthy. Don't do pharmaceutical drugs.
You hear that, folks? Don't do pharmaceutical. Keep it herbal.
Oh,
That's our
the whole
mantra.
thing was about alcohol
Keep
and
it herbal.
pharmaceutical, not even
Yeah.
aspirin, you know?
Yeah.
Don't do any of that synthetic chemical stuff.
Yeah.
Get it from herbs, food, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Mushrooms.
even herbs you need to be careful about.
Okay. Yeah.
They're, but anyway, the whole.
What do you mean about weed, or what do you mean?
No, I mean like a lot of the healing herbs,
Okay.
the soporifics, you know, the ones that help you sleep,
Yeah.
the ones, because let's face it, anything that has a truly medicinal aspect also has a toxic aspect depending on the dose.
Right. Right. It's potent. Potency.
If you think
Yeah.
about some of the stuff, you know, that people are taking
Yeah.
through pharmaceuticals,
Yeah.
deadly nightshade is a good example. Deadly
Okay,
nightshade can be very useful, you know.
Have you ever done much any witchcraft or anything like that?
No.
We don't. I mean, I like to call it that, but you know, have you ever done any stuff? with
Oh,
any,
okay. Now, okay, I'll tell you.
some spells for the good cause. For
Stop
good,
me
you
if you need to. Okay, the
Yeah.
first apartment Lee and I got into was in Bridgeport. We painted this wall in our dining room silver with metal bicycle paint,
know. Oh,
all
nice.
silver.
Billy Striggs is playing there later this year. I better go, huh? In Bridgeport.
Oh,
I better go.
Bridgeport's a great town, great music there. I mean, you know, Paul Newman called it the armpit of New York City.
Oh, really? For Bridgeport.
Oh, you could
yeah.
even get better Italian food in Bridgeport then.
Yeah.
But anyway, so then we went on the street. They had junk night in those days.
Uh-huh.
You know, 68, 69. I mean, whatever wasn't picked up in the night by neighbors,
Yeah.
the garbage men didn't make a fuss. They took it all.
Uh-huh.
So everybody put out everything.
Oh, wow.
We got great stuff. But
Junk
we
night.
got these old daguerreotypes.
Uh-huh.
These old people were the brown and the, you know, that old brown color, and
Yeah.
a lady in a cameo
Oh.
looking at the man, you know, it was like from the 1860s, not the 1920s. And I loved them, and we hung them up on this silver wall. It was right after that. We always kept our guitars. We had a room with twin beds, and we kept our guitars open in the cases
Mhm.
before we were going to ready to play, to get used to the air. And we always had dinner first, and then we're going to rehearse. When we paint the wall, put the pictures up, I'm sitting there, I'm like, what did you get, a cat or a bird? I mean, who's in there playing the guitar? And he goes to me like, I didn't hear anything. And I go, well, shut up, listen.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden,
On the guitar.
yeah,
The
it's
plucking
like
of the
in
strings.
the room, they're
Wow.
laying on the bed, but the cases are open.
Wow.
We did that. You do that for the wood.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. So Lee shoots up like she's freaked out.
Yeah.
I'm there like, you know, it's just some weird breeze.
Yeah.
No, call out, the windows aren't open. I mean, that's why I like that room.
She called you Cohout?
Oh, yeah, always. So,
That's a cool name.
then that started to happen, and we started trying to ignore it. Then the next thing that happened was we kept a alarm clock. Lee was always rushing late for classes. She was always trying to learn. Well, and you know, she ended up being an RN. But she was always studying serious music like jazz or studying chemistry with someone. So she had the alarm clock set up in our shower, or like a timer, you know, you do it for baking.
Yeah.
But anyway, as we'd be rehearsing at night, we'd have our guitars out, we'd have a pause. All of a sudden, we'd hear the clock ticking louder and louder.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd go, Lee, it's moving along the wall. And she'd go, no, it isn't, Cole. Shut up, you know. And
I've had that one.
finally, I go out in the bedroom one night, and I'm watching it wiggling along the wall, and doom it up. Did you get poltergeist at your place?
In Venice, I think our place is pretty haunted. Maybe it's Jim Morrison. But I've heard that when the clock gets really loud
That's
and the air
real.
gets thick, the air gets so thick, you gotta leave.
Now, this was before
If you're
the
by
movie.
yourself.
This was before that movie Ghostbuster, right?
Right.
This was 68, and that was...
Yeah.
Anyway, we're driving. We were going to Danbury for me to get a yodeling lesson.
Yeah.
Danbury's where the Rosicrucians had me meet them, too.
Gotcha.
But we were going to another part of the hills. There's some tall hills there.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you've ever been to
Mhm.
the really... A lot of reservations, too, Indian reservations.
Oh, wow,
And it's
okay.
mountainous part. Anyway, we're driving there, and we see this huge billboard. Like we're out in the sticks. There's this huge white billboard that says, got ghosts? Call Ghostbuster. And we
In the
squeaked on the
60s.
brakes. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I was 17,
Wow.
I think, right?
Ghostbusters billboard.
This would be 67.
So you got the number.
We get the number. Lee calls the lady. She says, go home and each get one of your own pieces of jewelry you wear a lot and bring it to me. And she gives us a date and says, bring me $80. I need cash up front. And I'm like, this is the stupidest thing I ever. I was always the one going, this is stupid. I'm not
You're like $80.
He's like, can you believe the timing? She goes,
Yeah.
you got to realize there's this other world, and we get to have the veil part now and then. See, Lee taught me a lot about the old world. Here's the cool part. So we go to the lady. Now, our phone call with the lady, we didn't have cell phones then.
Right.
We got her on the line, said, we saw your passport. The lady said, I don't want to talk to you. I want you to go back to where you come from, each get a piece of jewelry, come meet me here. I don't want to hear a lot about what's going on.
Right.
I just want to see you and hold the jewelry.
Hmm.
Okay. We get it, we go back, we give her the money. She's sitting there. She's the straightest lady I ever saw. Straight like lady that'd be playing bridge with my mom. She, you know.
Yeah.
She wasn't a hippie. She wasn't an old gypsy. She
Right.
wasn't a nothing. She was very gorgeous, elegant house. She's like sitting there. She says, oh my God. She goes, you painted a wall silver? Lee and I look at each other. She goes, you painted a wall in your house silver? Lee and I are still like, and Lee finally goes, yeah, we did.
Busted.
She says, you don't know anything about the spirit world? I mean,
Wow.
she goes, what an opening.
Wow.
She says, you want to repaint that wall.
You
Cover
made a
that
big
up.
portal.
She says, she's like, Lee's like, okay, we can go. You know, Lee. So we're both freaked out a little. Lee's thing is,
Right.
let's get out in the car. Mine is to start fighting with her. Like,
Well, let's get our money's worth. Yeah.
I'm gonna stay there. So she says,
Here, come out.
oh,
We can
stay. There's more.
Yeah.
You got pictures of old dead people on that wall? She goes, you're lucky you're alive. You stirred up a lot of stuff.
Wow.
She's like, I'll tell you what. You may have to get someone to to exercise your apartment.
But not her.
No, so let me tell you. She goes, I don't do that. Lee goes, I know the guy. We shoot right down to Fairfield
Wow.
Beach. She goes, Quinny Filippino. He's famous among the Italian community for being an exorcist. It's a family thing.
Wow.
Now it's a little, you talk about witchcraft. See, there's a lot of what people don't understand about Sicilians and people from Naples.
Yeah.
A lot of old school Italian people that lived in rural communities. You don't call it voodoo and you don't really call it witchcraft. But the evil eye, I mean, you know, you don't go shooting at it just you don't shoot at it. There's this whole, like, a language of knowing and knowing things like this. That's it was common knowledge. You see, people, this was what was the beauty of oral history.
Right.
People told stories that were true to keep rituals going. These traditions were to protect everybody from some malignant spirits and have people born into certain families that know how to dance them. Anyway, we go get Quinto. We all called him Queenie. He was quite a guy. He did a lot of bartending and bouncing. He worked both ends, depending on what they wanted down at the beach. So we pulled him off the door. He got a guy to cover him. Because Lee's like, I'm not going back there till he knew Lee, you know, I think they shot dope together. But he's here, come on, we all get in the car. And he's looking at us, he goes, again, this is what I've noticed, people that channel, when they're getting ready to work, shut up. Everybody be quiet. They're pulling a lot of energy. They may be expelling some, I don't know. But he got very quiet. The more, and I knew Queenie. Oh, I didn't know him as well as Lee did. I didn't hang out with him. But at this club we went to on the beach, George loved it too. I think it was called Beachside. He was always there. He was a great guy. I loved him. So to think of him in this light, and to realize he's going to go in there and try to get those guys, the spirits out.
Wow.
We had painted the wall, and she told us burn or bury the pictures.
Wow.
But we were still having weird stuff happen, and it was getting weirder and weirder. Doors opening, doors blowing open, cupboards. It was when the whole kinetic thing started out. That's when we.
Yeah.
So we pull off. Our apartment
There
was
you
like
go.
on the second. Yeah, this is my picture of Lee, because you see,
There you go.
I mean, look at this. If you want to see what my friend Lee looked like, she looked just like that Indian.
Oh,
With
wow.
long black hair
Oh,
and a
wow.
beautiful figure. But she was always real muscle like that.
Wow.
Real warrior. But, he's like, he goes, you stay right here. You both stay here. He gives me the key, he goes running up the stairs. And he goes in like a boxer running into a ring. Like he runs up our stairs and he looks back, he flings open the door, and there's like this boom. He
Wow.
explodes into the room like his own SWAT team, right?
Wow.
And we hear all this ruckus up in there. He's going, you get the hell out of here. You're making this. He's having a big conversation with all this. And it was like, and you know, the guy, I was trained as a psychiatric nurse. I told you, and trained up there at the retreat. And they put me firsthand on the violently insane ward. And of course, my sister and I did a lot of yelling at my husband. I know when people are just yelling. This was like demonic. I felt like Queenie was possessed.
Wow.
And Lisa.
Like Queenie was yelling too?
And we're lighting up the
guys were
Newport.
quiet.
We're lighting up the Salems. We smoked those Salem Mentos, and we're both lighting up and looking up like, you know, like we got to be there for him a little, but you want to run. You want to back the car up and go. Because the door's open, and we could hear stuff flying around.
Wow.
And it was just quiet. And you see him. Like he just did polish all the glasses of the car. Comes out, locks the door. And the real kicker was, because I said to myself, because I was a real skeptic then, see, I was always trying to find why this would connect with the real world I know. So I'm going to expect to find the place is kind of wrecked, or something's been pushed around.
Yeah.
The quiet descended, and then he came out.
That was it.
I go up there, need his pen. All the pictures are straight. So I became a believer from that day on.
I wonder what he knew, who had trained him, or what he knew to do.
See, that's what I meant telling you. He was Sicilian.
Yeah.
That's why he and Lee were close. All the Sicilians in Bridgeport family.
And he didn't have to say a special words or anything? Was he saying special Italian
You
words?
went in, but you see, that was that developed extrasensory perception of him of he was a demon slayer or a demon hunter.
He was energetic, yeah.
Right. Coming through the family. It was a Sicilian nurse. This guy, I think I told you this one, so stop me. When you and Ashley were here, it really stopped me. I had to drive a nurse all the way from Sarasota up to Tampa to go to a cancer clinic, sit there and get his drip, and then drive him back. So it's like a 160-mile run, back and forth. I had an old Lincoln and no AC. I was driving a cab for his company down there. So we had the windows open. He had been a nurse in New York City for 40 years. And here he was dying of lung cancer.
Queenie.
No, this other
This
guy
other
was also
Sicilian
Sicilian. So they call me in, and I pull up to get him. He comes walking out to the car, and he sits in the car. And he looks at me with a big smile. And he says, okay, I'm ready, let's go.
Wow.
And we drive off, and I think we just hit the highway when he says, oh my God, it's a Lincoln. You ever been in a big old Lincoln? They're great cars.
Yeah.
I like them even better than Cadillacs.
Neil Young loves them. Yeah.
Oh, you could get your arms, even if you're a big person, you could go like this, right? Or stretch out. He's like that, but he's a little stocky, more like Isaiah's size, a little bit.
Yeah. Our boy Isaiah. Shouts to Isaiah.
I'm using him as a model. He's like this, and he goes, oh, can you see them? And I look in the rear view, I kind of like, because the guy seemed pretty straight to me, you know. But I don't really know him. I just picked him up. But anyway, I told the he's like, it's like he's passed out. He goes, if you can't see them, tell me can you smell them? White roses.
Wow.
He says the car is full of them.
Whoa.
And I'm sitting there, and I'm standing there driving.
Yeah.
Like, I got it. And when you're driving a cab, you're booking, I think I told you that once, you're always pressing it. You're trying at least to even stay over 3 or 4 over, you know?
Why?
Oh, time is money when you're running a cab.
Right.
It adds up at the end of a 12-hour day.
Oh, so
You lose 2
so
or 3
cabbies
minutes
don't try to catch yellow lights. It just seems like that.
Oh, it seems like that if they know
Bad ones do.
they could get something else on the other end.
Yeah.
you know, the luggage at the airport and they're in a hurry and they got to
Yeah.
pay you to muscle it.
When did you start being a cab driver? When did that start?
I started in Brattleboro because they had a great cab company there. It was fun to do in the summer. And then I did it on an island off of near to Sarasota, but where Mom and Dad used to winter. Did you ever go to
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Englewood?
Did some fishing there.
It was this one little sab. It was a guy from Venice, Italy bought it. My
I
boss,
like
his
that
name
place.
was Sergio.
Inglewood with an E, huh?
Yeah, Englewood with an
It was
E.
on the Gulf because the
Cross
water
that
was
little
really warm.
bridge.
Yeah, the water was really warm.
Yeah, yeah. So this guy's in the cab. So here's the story. So I'm looking again. I'm thinking, am I going to lose my passenger? And it's wicked hot. Like, is this being really hard on him?
Uh-huh.
Like, I'm calculating what is my
Right,
next
right,
move,
right.
or do I keep cruising?
It's business.
So I'm cruising, and he goes, "Oh," he says, "he's here, and he's here to see you, Kerry." And I'm like, "Oh shit!" I'm about to throw my foot on the brake, and he goes, and he says he's your grandfather, and his initials are MG.
Oh wow.
Oh, and he says he has a widow's peak. He
Oh
said
wow.
maybe you might not remember him. You were a little girl when he died, and I'm like, shoot, man, this guy. I mean, out of all the possibilities, he's nailing it. Michael, our granddad, my mom's dad, had a beautiful widow's peak. And, you know, you could get MG anywhere, but he says to me, oh, and he says, Kerry, he wants you to know how thrilled he is. You never got a hunchback. You got a nice straight back. And I'm like,
Wow.
because you see, my mom had told me that her dad had all kinds of novenas said for me when they diagnosed me with polio that I would not end up as a hunchback. She said, Kerry, when I told her about this angel I met, because I think of him as an angel now,
Yeah.
I told her
That's
this
true.
when she was dying so she'd know that there was a heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Because how would this angel be there telling me what our grandfather said before he died to my mother?
Yeah.
But
True.
anyways, and then he
Well, that's
says,
like
yeah,
when our other grandma in Connecticut was passing away.
our Rogera one.
After grandma passed away, she spoke to one of our cousin's boyfriends. And she told him what was going on. Hey, I'm having dinner with my husband. I'm dancing with my son. I mean, yeah, you never know. It's like
How they're going to
communication.
communicate.
Yeah,
You see, you got to
yeah,
have the resonance to pick up the message,
yeah.
too, right? See, now here was I, and what
Meaning
you're.
what? What does that mean? You got to have the resonance. You got to be open
In
to it.
other words, you got to have your radar out. Look,
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't just grow my hair to be a shabby dready.
Me neither.
Our hair is our antenna.
Mm.
I mean, it's very. When you get your hair down, or you shake it out, and you're like out under the stars, or you're swimming or something, that is such. It's like a cat's whiskers, but in a much more magnetic way. You see, once you get into electromagnetic field resonance, and I did by looking at rocks, I was like, how on earth did these images get here? Well, this is a guy you need to look up, Sheldrake, Sheldrake,
One word.
a British
Sheldrake.
mathematician.
Okay, Sheldrake.
Mr. I don't know his Sheldrake, like
Okay,
Drake's
yeah,
cakes.
yeah.
Um, his big thing is resonance and electromagnetic fields. Then, in fact, see, because I'm going to go back to something we were talking about on the porch for a minute. And then we'll move into Super Soldiers and Valiant Thor. Because, you see, if we could see truly, and why some people's minds get too blown on ayahuasca or even LSD is, we wouldn't see, we're seeing a construct when we look and see each other as solid mass.
Right. Uh-huh.
We've been told we're solid.
Right.
We feel solid,
Right.
even though we know we could pour out mucus, all kinds of fluids.
They say the pyramids were made with sound.
I mean, it's such a beautiful thing. But so, if there's all this molecular activity and atomic activity to hold all these things together,
Yeah.
what do you think is doing it? What's the glue?
What's the glue?
It's that electromagnetic
Yeah.
resonating
It's the
field.
electricity.
It's yes, it's a form of, and as we are electric beings.
That's why we need that salt with the water. Keep the electricity flowing. Yeah.
Oh, it's great. And do you do that thing with the maple syrup, vinegar, and water?
No.
You ever done that?
No.
It really beats Gatorade.
Oh.
Oh man, what a charge it'll.
We'll see
Yeah,
if
I
they
took
did it
care
or
of this
not.
96-year-old guy. That was, well, he was. Are you 6'7" or 6'6"? He was 6'7".
6'3", maybe.
Oh,
6'3".
Eddie White. He was the
Yeah.
tallest patient I ever had, and I was taking care of him because he broke his spine. You should have seen 96. Because I'd done a lot of nursing. You know, I'm not an RN. I did the hands-on nursing. When you get all these licenses and certificates, and they call you a certified nurse's aide, but you're doing all the work.
He was 95 and 6'7"?
Yep.
Wow.
I did so much nursing. But for him, I was sent in because he had broken his spine. And I watched the guy heal,
Wow.
drinking his special Old Farmer's Gatorade mixture.
He healed himself.
Oh, yeah, he was like, Kerry, I have this electric patch I put here where it is.
Wow.
And I'll drink this stuff morning and night. And I'll walk a little.
Where'd he get that electric patch? From them.
He really rattled the links of the vets.
Wow.
He was an airplane mechanic flown over to Great Britain during World War II. You know, the South had some great mechanics. Oh, honey, I'm smoking my granddaughter. I better say that's not us. That was lovely.
What were your favorite cars to drive?
Oh, let me think. In terms of handling, I like a Honda.
Uh-huh.
I mean, and I watched my dad run around with a Honda. You could make him go for 10 or 20 years if you change the oil right. I actually love Cadillacs. Anything that has a body by Fisher.
Yeah.
I also like Buicks. I like something called, and I think it's called the Royale. I like a medium-sized Buick with a V6 instead of a V8 engine.
You don't really need a V8. It's a lot of gas these days.
Right. I also like, I think it's the Chevy Nova. See, I do like American cars. I never really got into, so I like Novas.
Were you ever driving like Corvettes, Mustangs? Not really. You didn't care about that.
Well,
you were cruising.
You know, I got spoiled with, well, you see, I can't really, because I only drive with one foot.
Yeah.
I have to have special equipment put on to drive a clutch.
Okay, yeah.
That would be just hand operated. And I've never wanted so badly to drive a sports car. But my opera coach raced Corvettes till she was 80.
Oh, wow.
Her place was full of, when we weren't in the music room, we were going through a trophy room. She raced them. She had me bring her to motor vehicles to turn in her license.
Oh, wow.
She goes, I'm a professional driver. They should have.
How'd you meet your opera coach?
When I first sang Il Macbetto, she came right backstage. Man, she raps it.
Where was that, Connecticut?
It was in New Canaan with an orchestra. It was
Yeah.
really nice.
Wow, with an orchestra.
I had my own dressing room because I was the lead, you know.
Wow.
Dad was there in the front row, and he was fuming. He'd been telling me, I don't want you to sing opera. He just didn't want me. And it was Addie, this lady.
Why, he didn't like opera, or he didn't like you singing opera?
No, he said, I can't stand watching women make fools of themselves, wailing and moaning up there like that.
Man.
He just didn't, you see, but he started mellowing. I mean, I was only 22 then, you know?
Yeah.
He mellowed, like, when I was helping Dad cut up and move some birch trees. No, it's beech trees. You know the beech trees, when you were in his property looking towards the shack he fixed up to rent to people?
Yeah.
There were a bunch of big old trees behind there.
Yeah.
They had trunks like this around.
Yeah.
Some of them came down in a storm. He cut them up with his chainsaw in chunks like this. And Dad would work me like a horse. That's why I call you Haas. Because he'd work you like me if he was right. He especially worked people that thought that they were creative or had
tried to get that out of them. Tried to work it out.
He's like, Kerry, get down in that dish and roll these up to me.
That's why he got up to Vermont. Get away from the creek.
So I'm like, he's got like 12 of them for me to do, and they each weigh like 60 pounds, and I know I get to roll them, but it's still. So I'm like down on my knees, and I got this big, heavy, like dark brown, heavy coat on. Some kind of a hat, and I'm down in there, and he goes, hey, Kerry. And he stops me, you know, I'm like halfway up on like the third. He's looking at that, he goes, Kerry, be careful. Oh my God, it's hunting season. You look just like a bear. So then I'm sort of say, Dad, don't worry. He's like, I'll run and get some kind of rag or something and we'll tie it on you.
Safety orange.
So, should I keep going or am I making you crazy?
No, whatever you
So,
want.
come on, now, because I'm telling you the end. It
Yeah.
always ties in with music. So then I said, look, Dad, I'll start singing. Why don't you sing a little? Then they'll know there's humans here.
Oh,
He's
yeah,
like,
that's
oh,
good.
okay, we could do that.
That's smart.
And he didn't like singing with me at all.
Uh-huh.
And like my mother, he didn't like singing with me. He wanted to be the lead, you know, and
Right.
I'm always the lead. So I start singing this song, and my father, he stops what he's doing and he looks down at me. See, he'd never been working and happy when he'd heard me sing. He'd been
Yeah.
in the house, he was always a little tense.
Right.
Or he never came to hear me public, you know, nothing. But, and he didn't hear me singing when I'd be around. When, I think it was the first time he's standing there, he's looking down at me. And I finished singing, like I rolled this one up and I'm still singing this song. And I put up, I think it might have been a song he liked. He knew some beautiful ballads and he played them for us on the piano. So I think I hit a note with him. But he's like, he's turned into his mystical mood. Like, Joey did this too. He was like, Kerry,
Yeah.
what a great voice you got. Like, why didn't you ever get a music education? Why didn't you go to a conservatory? I'm standing like now. I know my dad hasn't had a stroke. It's just that he's feeling particularly sensitive now and like he likes me. And he's been like blocking me off for years. So I kind of stand there and I said, because I stood up. I was like, should we like finish? And he goes, no, tell me. I said, well, Dad, I did, but I was somewhat impressionable when it came to you. I learned to sing in 8 languages. He's standing there like, he just met me or something. Yeah? And I said, I learned to read music. It took 2 years. Mom drove me to my coach once a week, 2 years, Dad. He's like, I think I heard about that, and I wasn't really approving. Oh, it's kind of like, and he's standing there going, oh, wait a minute. I think I remember, because you see, he was in his 80s or getting close to 90 when we're talking finally. He was in his 50s when he was going, you are not going,
Yeah.
Juilliard, right?
He was in his Archie Bunker prime.
Yeah, so he says to me, he goes, I told you not to go and you had a scholarship. Oh, he says, oh, I remember now. He goes, I just made a lot of money. And I didn't really want to publicize it. And I didn't really want you kids to know about it. But I just sold that shop, the electric shop. And he says, and you get that offer, and I thought, those people at that fancy New York City school, they'll get her in on a scholarship, and then I'll start getting big bills. And he says, so I remember that I had that thought, Kerry. He said, but if you really wanted to do it, you would have done it, right, hon? And I was like, well, now I would, Dad. But I was very impressionable, and I didn't want to lose you.
But he aligned with the Rosicrucians' plan to have you become a star later.
You see, because what his...
There are no accidents.
But because this is so interesting. This is where I want to keep going on this with you. Because you see, my dad had said to me at the point when he and I had like a confrontation right after he heard me sing in the concert hall. He's like sitting in the first row. I mean, the accolades I'm getting. My next step, they were renting a room for me at Carnegie Hall. That's where you first pop a soprano into the classical world community. And certain people are invited. It's very lauded down. You have a dinner later at like the top of the Sixes, right? So, but that, and my teacher said, you gotta have him. If you're gonna go through life afraid for your father to hear you sing, you're never gonna be able to sing at La Scala. I mean, just let him. We'll put him in the front row. Deal with it.
Yeah.
With all your hurdles, get over them. You have a lot of support behind you. They raised $1 million for me. It was a lot of money even in those days to get 4 years to Juilliard. But anyway.
How did the Rosicrucians contact you for that meeting? How did that happen?
Just a phone call. Lee picks up the phone in Black Rock, and Lee gets. You see, Lee wasn't a big talker. Sicilian.
Black Rock.
It was all her.
What was Black Rock?
Black Rock. That's where we lived. St. Mary's by the Sea.
And the
Her dad's mansion, and then he moved out when we lived there.
And how'd you meet her?
She went to Roger Ludlow and heard I was a guitarist and came over in her little seat. That's what I was going to say about sports cars. Yeah. We always had an MG. Yeah. So we scooted around in them, and I never needed to drive.
You met in high school?
Yeah. And right away, I kind of dropped out. I mean, I got my degree, my diploma,
Yeah.
but so no, we got back from Spain. We'd only been back from Spain, and me singing. At really, it was a request of Franco, but these Spanish people we were hanging out with from the yacht club were like, "You don't say no to this guy. It's not cool. You gotta, it'd be a
And so when you
big."
got back from there, that's when they
Yeah,
the call
we only
came.
been back about 2 days. They called,
Oh
and it
wow.
was a very quiet call with Lee, and Lee got very still. She hangs up. She says yes, and I see her writing a map. Phone clicks, and she turns and says to me, "We got a gig," and I was like, "Great." And I was like, "Lee, why are you writing a map?" I mean, you see, we played. It was rare. I mean, if we most even private parties, we go down to this Pequot Yacht
Was
Club.
that before or after Woodstock? This Rosicrucian meeting.
Oh, this was way after
This
Woodstock.
was in the
I mean,
'70s. Yeah.
Woodstock was like
So you
1969 or
right,
71.
but you went with
Well, this
Lee to
was,
Woodstock.
yeah, Lee and I were at Woodstock together.
You guys drove
We
there.
got to hear Jimmy in the morning.
Wow.
Jimmy got up and played for the camp. It wasn't
Right. Well, a
he was
lot of
just
people have
playing on.
left.
Oh,
Well, they
it
say
just
his
was
manager.
it was the day before the concert started.
Oh, you heard of the preview?
I
Oh,
left.
wow.
See, I didn't hear hardly any of the acts.
You heard Jimmy play at soundcheck
Yes,
opener.
no, right out. He just went right outside. Yeah, maybe he went
Wow.
and slept with his girlfriend in one of the tents. It was just right in our camp thing. Just him playing the Star Spangled Banner. It was
And what
just
time of day was that? Morning? Night?
dawn.
Dawn. Wow.
Dawn.
And then that's what he played at Monday.
I guess that when
Yeah.
it was.
He
But
says
Lee
he
and
saw
I were
you.
free.
He says he saw a UFO there too, but
I
probably
wouldn't be
won't be
surprised because
surprised.
Lee and I see. I use Lee as my antenna.
Uh-huh.
She was so old school. I mean, when she and I saw all those helicopters overhead, we immediately both got the same thought. We're like, this is some kind of a government setup to trap everyone and do something more, study on something more. We don't want to be trapped. And man, was it hard to get out of there.
Really?
If we didn't have an MG, we couldn't have gotten past the blockades.
Wow.
We were going under blockades.
They weren't letting people leave?
No,
Why
they
not?
didn't want. They declared it a disaster area and said no one could leave.
But you think that was pre-planned, or that's just what
Oh,
happened?
it sure felt like it.
Oh.
Coming in and seeing all the cops and seeing it get set up and seeing the helicopter.
Were you guys on LSD?
No.
No, you're straight.
For some,
Stoned,
we
maybe?
thought we were gonna. No, we thought we were gonna do our partying when we got settled.
Right, right.
That's the way
I do
we
the same. I
party.
like it that way too.
Yeah, you set up your tent, you figure out what stuff is.
I like to
and
be
then you start.
inside the show.
But there were guys. You see, the guys in black suits were right there at Woodstock.
Oh wow.
First, I was thrilled at all the people like dressed like you, all the colors,
Yeah.
all the long hair, all the ringlets, the ribbons, the
Yeah.
beads, the lambs, the goats,
You're right.
the creatures. It was just like a paradise on
Wow,
earth first.
Utopia. Friday.
It was great to get there a couple of days before it
Oh,
started.
so you probably got there.
While
what,
the whole
Tuesday?
crowd was gathering, right? Because Lee was like that. We like to get somewhere and we'd watch stuff develop.
Wow.
Okay.
Who did you get there before Joey? Probably.
Oh yeah, but look, Joey got there almost at the bitter end, and he gets into the hog farm. You knew that, right?
I think you were saying
Joey
that.
told you that.
No.
Oh, but me. But anyway,
Tell us about that. How did he get in with the hog farm? He just went and helped him.
Joey just knew one of the guys that came off
Yeah.
the truck from San Francisco.
I went to the hog farm last year. I went there.
Oh, cool! The one
up
in
above San Fran. Yeah.
over in Cali.
Wavy Gravy was there. It was really cool. I got to help with the parking.
Those guys.
My
you know,
friend
they're-
Crystal that drinks the pee and bathes in the
Yeah.
pee, she brought me there. So, shouts to Crystal.
It's
yeah.
and it's like in its third generation now,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's-
It's a legacy.
It's a real
that-
family vibe for sure.
Yeah, there's a legacy that goes on.
You
and
said Joey was chilling at the house. You want some water or something? I guess something.
Yeah, would you? No, not water. I think there should be some tonic. Right on top of the
Yeah.
fridge, there's a bottle of tonic water. Love some of that.
You said Joey was chilling at the farmhouse.
Yeah, there was a the hog farm. It was this group that set up. They got the only house on the site,
Yeah.
and they got that house reserved for them because they had a medical team,
Max's house, Farmer Max.
and they had a medical team, and then. So if you see the Woodstock movie, that's where you see Joey. You can see Joey bopping
You
around
can.
if it's uncut.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You've seen him.
Like
bopping
we
around?
got, because they had a party at Eclectic.
Oh wow. What's
Uh,
that? What's that? What's eclectic?
Oh, Eclectic was the fraternity that Joey lived at for a few years.
Oh wow.
At Wesleyan, he never actually went there.
Oh wow.
But that's where he met mainly his cronies.
He just lived at the frat house for a couple of years.
Oh, Joey was the king of the frat house.
He was supplying good reefers or what?
Oh, everyone was getting window pane from Joey, and what was it? It was the Osley stuff.
Oh yeah.
You know, coming from the Swiss lab,
Yeah.
and then the tangerine. There was an orange something. Orange sunshine.
Oh yeah, Orange Sunshine.
Owsley, that was the connection. You know.
We got to go Reddit for a minute.
I gave you some of that Orange Sunshine. That's what I gave you.
You
Full
can tell-
circle.
You can tell I am not pulling it out for a party.
Full circle.
Yep. It is. I'm going to have a very well planned cruise.
Do you think Joey stayed? He probably stayed at Woodstock till the end.
Oh, I
You
think
probably
he
stayed.
enjoyed it and felt wonderful in that house.
Did you guys ever talk about it after?
I don't think so. And you know what? Joey and I didn't talk a lot about our own experiences. He would usually grill me about why I wasn't being nicer to Susan, or why didn't I have a boyfriend or better boyfriends. Joe was very into kind of sorting me out. I never told you that Joey fixed me up with every available bachelor in his working area.
Oh wow.
When I first got divorced, I had about 7 dates. Each guy had a good business, lots of land, and they were all Joey's friends. And Joey, after my 7th date, Joey says to me, I think he invited me out for a drink. And it was like Joey had started his own dating service with me and I hadn't asked him to. We meet up at that place where he liked to meet everybody. You know that red place down by the water in Brattleboro? You got good burgers. Anyway, it had outside decks and everything.
Oh yeah, I would there.
We meet there. Yeah, he gets you good burgers and
Yeah.
stuff there. He gets me a cognac. He sits across from me and goes, well, Kerry, all the guys have checked in with me. He goes, now, see if my tally's right. Not one of them has called you for a second date. And I said, that's right, Joey. I'm sorry. You know, kind of like, oh, sorry, Joey. I failed. And he goes, no, no, no. He goes, but they all pretty much had the same problem with you. And I said, oh. I looked at him. I was like, really? Thank God I had a cognac there, you know, because, you know, you and I talked about criticism. You see, that was a huge part of my opera training. It had been holding me back as a performer for years.
Not liking criticism.
I couldn't handle somebody
Yeah.
looking at me cross-eyed.
Right.
So I'm sitting there like, Joey, what is it?
Yeah.
He goes, well, you don't need them, Kerry.
That's funny. I was just telling my buddy that, and my other friend laughed. I go, you know what kind of girls we like? Ones who need us. Well, and in a good way, because it's true. People don't need you; they don't need you. Whatever that means.
They don't need
Whatever
you.
it means. They
And
don't,
I was kind of like, yeah, give me more.
we're not as useful to everyone as everyone else.
He's like, Kerry, you exude confidence. I got it all knocked all figured out. What do you want to do? You know,
He
you're
needed to
up
team you
fun,
up with. He needed to team you up with like Richie Havens. Yeah, a big heavyweight.
A friend of mine is trying to team me up here with this old cowboy that has his own group of what he calls the Butterfly Girls
Oh.
that he talks to online. You know.
Whoa.
So can I give you a bud to add to your collection for
Oh, no,
Boston?
please. I got
You'll
plenty.
get something there.
Yeah.
So he's cute.
What's going on with
Smart.
Valiant Thor? We got to get to
Oh
Valiant
yeah,
Thor.
let's get to Valiant Thor.
Yeah,
Okay,
Valiant
great.
Thor. But last thing about Woodstock, who else did you see play there? Once it kicked off, did you see Richie
That was
Havens?
it. We got out of there.
You left. So you left before Friday.
Oh yeah, I
You
left.
left
I
early.
didn't stay there and listen. I
Wow.
watched it all. Right then, you got to go home and watch it.
Wow.
I just watched the whole
You and
thing.
Lee seems like a pretty cool duo.
It was. I wouldn't have gone with Lee.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have gone along with leaving if I didn't get freaked out by the guys all in black with
Right.
their black cases full of drugs,
Did Joey and Lee get along?
designer drugs.
Were Joey and Lee friends?
Joey and Lee had a very acute awareness of one another that Lee was, you see, I gotta tell you, hard drugs really divide people. Joey was into coke if he was doing something hard. Lee was into heroin.
Wow.
They knew that. Like Liggs, my buddy, the guy I first loved, that was my like childhood sweetheart, that had been Lee's sweetheart until she, kind of came out of the closet. When he was asked to go on tour, he was listed with ASCAP and BMI in Manhattan
Uh-huh.
and in LA. So when he was asked to go on tour for Crosby, Stills and Nash, the last American tour, right? They asked him to get, I think I already told you this, to get a good keyboard player. They also needed a keyboard player. He talked to Steven Stills on the phone. My friend Liggs was living his dream come true he'd been working towards since he was 12. He had latched onto Steven Stills as his role model and the guy he most wanted to someday play with. Like a great, he was into baseball and bass, He was a bass player. So when they call him and they say, we want you to do the tour with, and it was Steven talking to him, and Neil Young wasn't on, it was the Crosby, Stills and Nash American tour. I don't remember hearing Young was there. But anyway, Liggs told me when they first went there and they went to do their first rehearsal, and Steven and David Crosby realized that Liggs and our friend was named Sikazy, this guy Louis Sikazy, that Liggs and Louis smoked dope and did heroin in a pit, you know what I mean, if they were on tour. Oh my God, there was like almost a battle on the set.
Yeah.
And then Louis dropped it. They all worked together though. They worked it out. They just didn't hang together.
Yeah.
But they had signed on for a complete tour. When you do an American tour, let me tell you something.
Yeah.
People think it's glamorous, but it's grueling. By like the 10th city.
It's wiped out a lot of our heroes.
Yeah, it's, some people are being eliminated, but others like Louis, he just went down, just stepping onto the stage.
Yeah.
And Steven stepped right over him.
Oh, wow.
Liggs' best friend, stepped right over his body, turned to his manager and said, get another keyboard player as quick as you can. I'll go out there and keep the crowd happy. And he went out. Liggs had to go on with his bass. He goes out and says not a word. That this human being just died. Right there, right entering onto the stage, right as the lights are hit. But, this is another thing. Addicts are not very compassionate towards one another.
It's true.
When you're talking hard addiction,
It's true.
life.
Well, they know it could happen at any moment. They know.
Like, I'm not gonna,
Hard drugs. And Joey, he was traveling around with some girls who were dealers. He traveled around with them.
Oh, yeah, that one he really loved, Linda.
really?
She died as an overdose from... See, some of them were into heroin, and I just think it didn't agree with him. Joey tried everything.
Right.
But his thing was, he wanted more the Charles Bukowski,
Yeah.
that guy you like.
Because,
You wanted to do the hard drinking and then get something to jack him up even more.
Yeah.
Joey was always fighting, being really...
Yeah.
So anyway, let's talk about Valiant Thor a little.
Please.
So your background in Valiant Thor, you've seen the pictures of him, shots they've gotten of him at the UN, at the Pentagon.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of him.
We've seen stuff that
Phil
we can't
Schneider
really
talked about him, showed photos, but then I saw an episode of a TV show where there's some guy who had a UFO or a paranormal TV show in the 60s or 50s, and I think he got to go on Valiant Thor's ship. I think Valiant Thor saw his show, trusted him, brought him on his ship and stuff.
Well, that's so cool because, you see, a lot of people have listened to a man that was supposedly started with the assistance of Donald Trump, something called the Pentagon Human Trafficking Task Force. And this guy, Gene Decode, never showed his face, and he'd have this blue-eyed shepherd dog, and he'd tell you amazing, outrageous stories about the DUMBs, the deep underground military bases.
Phil Schneider.
Well, and he would speak about Phil Schneider, but many others. He would speak about super soldiers and the medbed technology, Gene Decode. But then Gene Decode became involved with, and I'll think of this man's name and I'll jot it down for you, a man that was getting so close to some of the real kingpins of the human trafficking. You see, a lot of people looked the other way of human trafficking for years until it became evident that children were being used because of this kind of epidemic of adrenochrome. that it was really being, it was the drug of choice. If you've got billions of dollars, you really do want to pay 40,000 for a hit. How can you really enjoy something
Yeah.
that you can hit on all
40,000 you is $40. Yeah, exactly.
night? Right?
So,
But it's
adrenochrome.
also, it's hallucinogenic. It creates longevity.
So who likes adrenochrome? Regular humans or more like aliens?
I think they've got to be part hybrid, or they've allowed, and I'm about to mention something you must have heard of.
Uh-huh.
They've had the vril placed inside them. See, that's how humans are hybridized. Celebrities. Let's talk about Beyonce and that husband of hers. I forget the name, the
Jay-Z.
producer. Jay-Z.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone that's following, like, because I'm a vocal coach, and the voice of the colored Creole and also full blood African American woman is one of the most velvety, luscious voices on earth. Certain ones like
Alicia Keys.
at least, but she doesn't have the velvety
Who else is
quality that Beyonce had
Right.
for a while.
Tony Braxton, maybe.
Oh, Tony Braxton,
Yeah.
she's one I always
Billie
want to
Holiday.
say. Yes, Billie Holiday, and then there's a Shirley Bassett. There's this velvety, deep, warm. So I really follow
Nina
Beyonce.
Simone, of course.
Well, you see, I'm not against transgendering. What I'm against, see, Nina Simone is a male to female.
Oh,
That's why you're getting those incredibly deep tones. Now, I'm not against castratis either.
what's that?
Transgendered, well, someone having their
Okay.
testicles removed so that their voice won't break in adolescence. It can be done when you're more mature, but and
So
then
you
you go on.
think Beyonce and Jay-Z are into adrenochrome?
Oh, totally. But I think they put the vril in her.
And what's
You
the
see,
frill?
she got hybridized. Oh,
What is the frill?
that's how the vril. It's V like
Yeah.
in Victor.
Yeah.
R for
Yeah.
Rick. ILL. Vril.
Okay.
It's a little worm-like version of the serpent, the reptilians. Okay? That are, for example, one of the reasons the royal family had to go, one of the reasons it's finally official, the good Queen Lizzie is dead, is she had become so reptilian over the years. Her need for not adrenochrome, but for child sacrifice human meat, and also for her husband, Prince. It wasn't Charles, her
Yeah.
son is, but also that's why these people were all removed. What you're seeing, any pictures you see of them now are all doubles or well-trained actors, or it's CGI.
Does adrenochrome
The royal-
connect with Valiant Thor?
Oh, absolutely, because, okay, so Valiant Thor is from Venus.
Right.
And he represented from Venus the crew that, let's think the starship, the
Yeah.
third world,
Yeah.
where they have a galactic world, a ship where everyone meets.
Yeah.
To talk about ordering all the worlds throughout the
Galactic
universe.
Federation.
Yes, okay.
Right.
Well, Valiant Thor is representing the Venusians and planet Venus
Uh-huh.
in the Galactic Federation.
Right.
And the Galactic Federation, things got so bad when once the nuclear explosions had happened in the desert,
Right.
the Galactic Federation started monitoring.
Right. They can be felt through
Okay.
dimensions.
Now, this ties in with stuff. You aren't going to see Valiant Thor going into this extensive history with you. Valiant Thor's going to bring you right up to, we decided after this and watching it, first of all, his warning is, the whole nuclear war thing is a threat to wake people up in the Western world that are going, there's no threat. Because there's a great threat. You're all going to turn into robots, and your children are all being sacrificed underground to make this great new drug, and a few people want to kill all of you, and we don't want to see 90% of humanity killed. See, that's the number that the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, Bill Gates, they're big into this. We got to get, it's humans that are destroying the earth. It's humans that are the green problem.
And that's what Phil Schneider was kind of mad about.
90% have to be removed.
Phil Schneider said that Eisenhower had made a deal with the aliens and wasn't being honest about that.
Okay, now many people say, now that's where some of the abductions come in,
Right.
that the deal he made was that they could come and take a certain number
Right.
of human beings
Right.
and run tests on them as long as they would wipe out the memory.
Right.
So there wouldn't be a panic on Earth about it.
Right.
But also, you have to understand the reptilian population that has been here before humans. And this is something that Valiant Thor will go on about. If you can hook up to one of his missives, he gets censored all the time. Now, a site, I'm trying to think, it's called Pianon. She keeps flashing up one of his from November that there's some great information in. So if you
Okay.
can remember, capital P and then space, capital Anon.
Yeah, he had a lot of speeches.
And he tells you great stuff.
Yeah.
So his recent stuff has been, we have wiped out all the nuclear facilities, and any new ones and any new weapons, they're neutralized by us. We have that technology. He goes,
Oh.
what we can't do is we haven't been able to locate all the Jews. The electronic devices like that started the wildfires here. Those electromagnetic, they're hidden in different places.
They could start earthquakes, maybe.
Oh,
They could do everything.
and they changed. That's why we had weather nobody remembered in 1,000 years. Forget 100 years.
Yeah. Wow.
Here in Texas, when they were battling, I mean, there's been a big
So
battle
Valiant
going
Thor
on.
was from the Galactic Federation, just trying to help the good
But
people.
so we finally came. They directed from out there and kept observing us till the human trafficking thing
Yeah.
got so bad. And until there was so much money being poured to more and more deep underground bases, to the extent that, for example, up here at the Denver airport, the international airport, if you had the right access,
Yeah.
that's a 20-story building underground, but it's not a building. It's a 20-story of 20 cities.
Wow.
It's cities with climate-controlled air, with light, with
The
oxygen.
Denver airport. You know, I saw a UFO
with
there.
PX.
You know, I saw a UFO
Oh, I'm
there.
sure, but here's another thing.
Yeah.
So we don't know if you saw a UFO
Right.
or you saw a back-engineered,
Right.
like
saw an
what they
orb.
traded with Ike.
Yeah, it was an orb. It was,
We'll
I saw
give you
some-
some of our technology,
Right.
and
I'll show you
we
the video.
will.
Show you the video.
So Valiant Thor, his big thing right now is they're all in Geneva. His reports are coming out like this. We're in there. We're in the 7th and 8th level in most cases.
Yeah.
We're taking out these despicable creatures. We just can't have, because you see, there's a high level of intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
But they morph into these huge shapes that just need massive amounts of meat, and they like human meat. It's becoming, and you see, here's the reflection in the Bible.
Yeah.
There's this whole part in Genesis
Yeah.
about these monsters when he's explaining to Noah that certain monsters have been created that are making man is not safe here anymore.
Wow.
And certain beings have been created that our Creator Father must destroy because they're against humanity and they're destroying His creation. The creation being the plants. And it's interesting if you think about it. We keep being told as the people, like, you got to recycle your garbage and don't fly too much and don't drive your car. And the elites, that's why they only want that, these, because they want to fly, they want to use the one, and the cure isn't going to come from us not doing it, Grip. The cure is going to come from the huge corporations deciding we're going to put, 20 million into cleaning that body of water. Because the technology's all there. If the will is there. Now, honey, what can I send you on your way with if you're going to... Are you getting ready to roll?
Because Valiant Thor was in the government for a couple
yes,
of years,
he
right?
was now. I'm not. But that's why
He
the
was in
picture of
DC.
him at the Pentagon was important.
Right.
Right.
He was
'Cause
actually
his
there.
name. Look, you could type in. Do you ever go on BitChute?
No.
Okay.
know.
Well, I think he's also on.
I can find him on
Rumble
Google,
now?
though. I can find him.
I haven't been able to find him.
All right, we'll look
Or
for
maybe
him.
you can. He goes usually under Commander Valiant Thor.
Yeah.
All right. Now, do you need to use the can before you
Oh,
go?
no. Let's talk about Phil Schneider a little, though.
Okay. Well, Phil Schneider, you know, he's the
Because that's how I
one.
found out about
I
Valiant
think
Thor.
Phil Schneider is one of the absolute bravest of all the whistleblowers
Thank
about
you.
the dumbs.
Yes.
Okay, but here's what I know of Phil Schneider. He was working. He was one of the individuals that handled heavy equipment, did excavating, did all kinds of engineering, or maybe even did the plans and didn't handle heavy equipment. But he was part of the team that would go in and excavate and build these underground facilities and then maintain them. And one of his first opening talks, he mentions that all his crew and he had to sign NDAs. And these were not just your everyday non-disclosure agreements. They were extremely binding contracts that held a layer of intimidation and threat that your life was at stake if you broke. That this was top secret and you were getting into a very high level and you didn't do this and that and there are certain places you didn't go. So he and his friends were allowed to go deeper and deeper, or his crew, I should say. They weren't friends. They're in there working. And I believe it might have been up in Nevada, or it may have been somewhere, but somewhere in that northeast corner of desert, okay? They were way deep underground.
There's one little Valiant Thor shot. He's around. I'm looking on Twitter.
This is the one I'm thinking of
Yeah.
him. So if you'll look at, this is a great short, but look at that.
What's
guy.
crazy is that he
Look
said
at the physique
they said
on
he showed up, and then the two state
Disappeared.
troopers found him. The two state troopers took him right to the White House, supposedly.
They knew there was some
Valiant
kind
Thor,
of.
yeah. They probably saw a ship and were like, "All right, let's go."
So these guys were down in there, and they were, you see, they were excavating a new layer, and they broke through
hmm
into a layer they weren't supposed to go into.
You're talking about Phil Schneider.
Phil Schneider,
Yes.
that's how he was his
Dulce,
first injury.
Dulce, New Mexico.
Okay,
Dulce, New Mexico.
and that's where he became aware of the level of punishment their weapons could deliver on human flesh and bone.
Because he says a bunch of Green Berets got killed, and he got his injury. That's what he says. Yeah.
But and what he saw, you know, the way he describes the beings he saw. You see, my thrill of hearing Phil was because this is the beings I've been seeing in rocks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, most of my photos I was able to take that have been like these reptilians and there are other being forms,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not light beings, but they don't just look. For example, let's think of the island of Dr. Moreau
Mm-hmm.
and what they call chimeras or chimeras. In other words, a hybridized being, something that might be seen on the tombs in the pharaoh's tombs on the walls, the Anubis or something. Some people thought, oh, those are symbols for something we'll know. In fact, it turns out it may be that there were dogmen in those times
Oh yeah.
of magic. You see, to really understand the word magic, we have to understand that most science has grown out of magic. That magic,
It's the same thing.
alchemy,
Yeah.
chemistry,
Physics.
this
Yeah.
mixing of vital substances to try to create a whole new thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's just
Because
pretty
Phil
much.
Schneider then,
But you see, Phil Schneider got taken out.
because he spoke out, he was talking out.
Oh yeah,
His
he
speeches
was
are still around.
warned, and
Yeah.
he pretty much, towards the end of his life, when he was making his last talk,
Yeah. He
he
knew.
would say, you know, the punishment is getting worse. Well, let's move
Yeah.
up to the present.
Yeah.
Let me think of the name of this Canadian musician that has come forward. Not that Jewish actor in Hollywood that they said, you know, committed suicide and outed a lot of people. This was a Canadian musician that started outing the whole cloning thing. Because first of all, his first video clip, I'll think of his name or I'll send it to you, but I have to tell you a little about him because I think you need to know more about cloning actually
Oh
to
yes.
really get stuff.
Please.
See, clones are not made just to have an available double to show up somewhere for someone, or just to fool the public into thinking they're dealing with the genuine article. clones really became made by and loved by and wanted and needed by the elite as they became more and more reptilian or demonic due to adrenochrome use. It just creates a savage aspect to a human. And then if they didn't have reptilian blood, eventually they would have the vril. That's why there, if you go on the internet, like I think Linda, and I'll give you another site, where they post pictures of politicians, religious leaders, celebrities, athletes, with all a black eye, but not just a black eye. It's always a black eye here. It's always on the right. Because they have to, the vril has to go into the eye and up into the brain in order for this reptilian. And then it has a host, you see? And this creature grows from it. It doesn't, you don't get worms in the brain. This person has the ability to come and step into their reptilian, this other being, that then has these powers. That's why ufology got interested. Because reptilians have tremendous powers of being able to move as fast as lightning. Be as strong as a...
I wish you could be my buddy Super. My buddy Super was a roadie for all these people, and he's my UFO spotting mentor. And he has these. His astral projection stuff happened, and he was in a control room, and there was these two huge cobras by one of these big glass control things, and they go, "Oh, we're manipulating Earth. We're doing all this," and he goes, "Oh, that's pretty messed up." And they looked over. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was like glitching out of there by accident. And the head comes over to him, the big snake head, and it goes, "Do you have a problem with that?" And he's like, no, no.
Well, this is what I mean.
And then another time he woke up and he was working in a mine. They had him working somewhere, and he threw down his shovel because he became like lucid. And they came up and they threw him out. He has some good ones.
You see what I mean? But look, this world is all around us, and in some ways, like the Silver Wall, we don't want to make ourselves a portal to a lot of this stuff, Griff.
Yeah.
But we want to be able to be aware of it and to appreciate it sometimes. Sometimes there's stuff there. In other words, I've stopped thinking about extraterrestrial life since I become aware of all this, what's going on down below. And since I understood and learned Sheldrake's theory of resonance, and that is that, and it's a mathematical, and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting these key phrases, but what it is, and what I've seen with practically every rock I've gotten, if I have a beautiful image on a rock this big, and I capture the image, I can then break that rock into 20 pieces, and I will have that image on every rock. And if a chip falls off that rock that is this big as my pinky nail, and I can get the right magnification and focus with a camera, I can reproduce the same image that it was on the initial. And this is an aspect of resonance fields, and it's a mathematical, there's a wonderful name for it, but it's this replication thing that happens as a part of electromagnetic fields and resonance. In other words, okay, let's take it down to human life. If you looked at the number of sperm it takes to fill a teaspoon, and then you put them under a microscope and you saw how many were there, and you could magnify to the point where you could zoom in on one, and you realize that largely they're invisible. And one of them is going to go into a beautiful woman or whatever, a host at this point on our earth, and it's going to be welcomed in. That ovum, that egg is going to split from this tiny little thing, and life is replicating immediately from that moment. When it's filmed, it's like boom, boom, it's happening. So, and if once we have the kind of cameras that could actually see that stuff, and maybe we do, and I just haven't gotten to see the film yet, but that replication occurring, and that image that has been all the time just as that little acorn knows what it's going to look like when it's a full-grown oak. That human being, Griff, in that little tiny invisible drop that had 1,000 other buddies in there swimming around with Griff. I mean, these are the part where you start to go, wait a minute, should we be calling that magic or science? You know, and to even understand it, should we call that spirit or material? It comes into the material world. So, look, I'm going to cut to the chase. One of the things that kept me going in the world of opera when I realized how incredibly difficult it was, because I had to not only, see, I was a natural singer and musician. So now I had to learn to read music, count beats, read time signatures, sing in different languages, act a part, and all the time make it look as easy and as much fun as a walk in the park. That was one of the hardest things I had to do, learn to sing opera. Not to make it look difficult. You know. But when my teacher told me, because I was going to give up, she says, Kerry, you're kind of a philosopher, so let me tell you this. When you're through and you become a master in this, you can teach other people. She said, and you can get up and sing an entire score of music without the music and without accompaniment. She said, you will finally have made the invisible world visible. And she says to me, what we love and what people, you'll find that the very rich love music, and particularly this kind of emotional music is because of its ephemeral quality. Because those moments where this world is rolled out, they come and go. That world is rolled out and it disappears and it can never return again. That's why I like singers like Callis or Crusoe. People would say,
Did you like Amy Winehouse?
oh man, I felt the same way about her and people should have. Every time she opened her mouth.
Pretty dope, yeah.
Oh, but not only that, she fully possessed herself and her role.
Yeah.
And the moment, you know.
Fully formed star. Fully formed.
But she was also reaching out and getting the whole audience in with her.
Oh, yeah.
Her energy.
Well, that's why I like Billy Striggs, because to be Billy Striggs is like Jerry Garcia, because you feel like he's your buddy.
And
you
it's
feel
totally
like,
getting
he's chill.
Everybody.
But then they have the superstar skill where they can make it seem like they're playing everything just to you. They appeal just to everyone. Somehow they connect with everyone.
You got it.
Yeah. And like Prince can do that. And there's a lot, and Jimmy can do that. But these guys also feel like they're your buddy for some reason.
And my only problem with celebrity, because I think it's charisma and dynamism and playing to big crowds, and I mean, millions of people getting to hear or see you, you know, throughout your lifetime is a wonderful thing. But my problem is when celebrities become mouthpieces for politicians.
Oh, yeah.
You see, it was very interesting. It was like, yeah, right.
Right.
Or become monetized to that degree where they're not just spontaneously. You see, I think why people were crazy about David Bowie was David Bowie was just, or like your guy, who's that wonderful, crazy Californian? He died kind of young, too. He has the crazy kids, too. Oh, honey, Frank Zappa.
Oh, my boy, yeah.
Somebody like Frank Zappa, he never got monetized or corrupted or compromised.
Right. That's why we like him. Him and Carlin.
Oh, my God. They were always just doing their thing, like, you know. And they're like, but that takes very careful planning. I mean, they had plans A, B, and C, you know. To survive, once you get to a certain point, see, this is what I thought. Me and Leandra worked 7 solid years to get gigs in Boston. It was the one city we couldn't get gigs in, right? We finally got a gig there, and we were so thrilled, and we got good money, too. We had enough to hire a drummer and a bass player. And we already had this brilliant young guitarist that was like, you know, one of these people that's all over the guitar. I can't think of, like Stevie Ray Vaughan or someone. Right? And we loved that kind of thing. I didn't really, but we get to
Stevie Ray.
Stevie Ray, oh.
Right up there with Jimmy.
But I'll tell you something. with my experience at that club and with that setup and finally about to make the big time, that I decided I don't want to do this anymore. And I went to study classical music. I quit the whole scene because right before we went on, I got given an ultimatum. I do this or the show isn't going on. And I was like, okay, I'll do that because the show must go on. And then I felt like shit for about, you know, because you should never compromise your own values or what you believe
Yeah.
is true and right.
Don't put it, as Zappa would say, don't put on the brown lipstick.
Because the thing is, you see, and artists know this, that if you want to write something that's going to last beyond your life, or you don't necessarily need it to last beyond your life, but you want it to reach bigger audiences than you, where it's not reaching them like, oh, this is Kerry's song. It's reaching in a way you said that it becomes personal for them. They're like, oh my God, who wrote this? Like when I was a kid, I'd be like, I can't believe this person didn't meet me and write this about, you know. You really identify with certain songs.
Mm-hmm.
That's the ones I live to write.
Yeah.
And I want to keep
Well,
going.
and some of those ones are universal downloads that come in, so they resonate with all because they come
Oh,
from.
yeah, and they do
come from up
come
top.
that way.
Yeah.
Some of your poetry comes that way, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Exactly.
Do you work away at some of your poetry, though?
Yeah. I mean, I think.
Get an idea and then kind of work
Yeah,
on
I
it?
do, but then I also think you need to sit down and start working for some time for it to come in.
Oh, yeah.
That's the key.
You got to keep writing.
Yeah. So if you're lucky, sometimes you're biking around and something comes to you, but then other times you got to get in there and open the door.
And did you notice, so as long as you keep opening that door, sometimes time flies in there.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
And sometimes you just have to do whatever that
Yeah.
you said you'd do, right?
Yeah.
And then re-rate it. I
Yeah.
got stuff all over the house.
Yeah.
It's one of my big problems. I got to go through my stuff. You can't
Yeah.
throw out this stuff.
And
for
that's
2
why
years.
sometimes I
You gotta-
bring some stuff and then I'll riff on it. I'll use some and we'll,
You'd be like, well, okay, I can let this go now. I've done it,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Or you at least want to use it, but you can also freestyle it in the moment because it's all the same,
Because
really.
it's all, but this is the thing. See, once, I remember I was working, matter of fact, I got a book out of the library that was very good, that was written and published, and this woman got a lot of prizes, that I worked with, trained in a deli. She was Lebanese, and I play my songs for her, you know. She says to me one day, she goes, Kerry, she goes, I'm a writer, and I'm going to write a really good book and get awards and make some money. She was like 19, you know. She's just a junior or something in college. She goes, so let me tell you what writers know you need to know. You got to come up with a new idea. And I was like, honey, let me tell you, when you're writing songs, you have ideas you got so many ideas. I was like, one of the reasons I think you might not be getting my songs is I need to pull out some of the ideas, make them But anyway, man, did she write a book about that? If you want to, she wrote a whole book about it. I might even try to I saw this shiny book on the shelf. I think it was something like Focus, but it was really, she turned it into a whole thing. She did a whole history, research. You know, these scholars that come out of writing programs, but they're nonfiction. It moves towards philosophy and science. It's kind of like Salt. She did all the research. I read it and I'm like, I feel like this person was trying to tell me this years ago. After reading like a 300-page book. But that's my whole thing. The world is full of ideas, Griff. And that's why it's so cool as an artist. You keep, like, I love the fact that you like to play pool.
Oh, yeah, huh?
Something really happens when you let your mind get into geometrics. Just that thing of leaning over the table, figuring out the angles. Our minds. Our minds need that stuff. See, this is why I wish education was much more back to reading, writing, arithmetic. Like, get these components and get them, play games with them and get them in your mind. Don't use calculators or computer gaming so much. You know, get games going in your mind. And because you see, what I was going to say about paranormal strengths and abilities is really we're made to not even need a piece of crystal in a cave. We should be able to project right into the ether Right, because some of my dreams, out of body, a monkey shows up.
Wow. Now we're talking.
Like when I asked to be flown to Jake's new place in Brooklyn years ago when he was there.
Mm-hmm.
I was like whoosh. I felt myself flying like through the sky. It was so good.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that whole entrance. We used to go into New York a lot. It's different from Vermont though, you know. So I came in on this other way, and then like some long, and I'm on this roof, and I'm like, kind of like I think my dream screwed up, you know. It was like my whole like that aura body was very heavily on this roof, and then I hear, and I start seeing these words floating across from this light pole, and a monkey sitting over there, and he's going, and the words float, and I hear in my head, he says, "You're right over Jake's apartment. You're on his apartment, but just look down, and you can see through see where you want to see." And I go like this, and I'm like, and then I go like this, and the whole thing goes, and I look at Jake in his room, and I'm looking at all this stuff, and I'm like, and then I'm like, he goes, "So, you know, you ready to go back now?" And I mean, I didn't hear a sound in the dream, but it was such a vivid, I mean, you see my dream, and like when I'm laying here and I don't ask for an out-of-body experience.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, when I focused on this picture, I gave it to the person. I wish I still had it. It was a very old print of that Goya. You know, have you heard of the Spanish painter Goya?
Yeah.
He was doing a lot of he always had in the old days, these painters had a lot of stuff in their pictures. In a portrait of someone, this is a portrait of a child with toys. But there were all symbolic meanings for these beautiful old toys, like a wooden carved horse and a little globe of the world and things like that. But the boys are in their silhouettes. And I'd go over the picture before I had all this junk there. I stood in front of it and I lit candles and I said, we're going to ask him to come in. I said, you show me pictures of him, he really reminds me, and I'm getting a very spiritual pull there. Maybe it'll be like a gateway. We'll draw a spirit in just tonight so you could say goodbye to him. You see, she was a very dear friend, and he died suddenly, and it was kind of, the funeral was weird, everyone freaking out, but she was more rattled than. So, man, did she get shaky when we sat down, and I held her hands, and I said, we're doing this. And I spoke to him, I said his name, I said, you know, it was very sudden and violent, and you are so loved. I know I never met you, but I'm trying to act as a channel to invite you in. Come here, and then you can give a blessing, and we can let you go, and know that your soul will be over. This lovely little waving of the light moved right over there. And then like I was doing this with, she shot right out. She goes, I gotta go. Gets in her car and goes.
Wow.
I was like, oh, so much for that. I kept my bed over there then. It was my first year in here, I think. So I kind of shut things down and went to sleep. Well, I shot up in the dark about 20 minutes later, and I've never in my life, I just shot up in the dark and sat there. And I watched this light pour out of that picture I'm pointing there.
Out of the painting.
Out of the painting I had up there.
Wow.
Poured like it was lightning.
Whoa.
Poured out of it. Came, and this figure came and stood in front of me covered in blood.
Oh, damn.
And I was there as it's happening, because you see, I told you what happened with Chris and the voice. There's still a skeptic part of me when this paranormal
Right.
events occur. You're kind of doing stuff like this.
You tell you.
So with this, I did this to pinch myself, like I'm really up.
Right.
I wasn't having. Stands in front of me, and I'm seeing the dark eyes, the dark hair, because she had shown me several pictures. I'm just covered in blood.
Oh.
Just momentarily while I'm like this, and then where I see the whole, and it was a being. You see, this is what I'm saying about molecules and electromagnetic resonance.
It was solid. There was something solid
something solidified in the ether
Wow.
as a result of that request I had made. And then I watched it go right through that door. I watched the whole thing. It wasn't like it disappeared. I watched it go through the door. And I just sat there for like half an hour like this.
Whoa.
I was like, there's this other world. And
Yeah.
I know I would never try to contact it for anything other than like what I wanted.
Yeah.
And in a way, and then later I told the young lady, and she felt really good, like the message had gotten to him.
Yeah, big time. You ever hear from Joey? Or grandpa or grandma?
I keep expecting to now. I'll tell you what happened
Right.
to me with granddad. Um, George called me. You see, I was taking my crew, or we had just been at a revival, and it's a big deal to have your choir invited to a revival in Memphis.
Uh-huh. Oh, wow.
There's like 300 choirs in town, and
Oh, wow.
only 6 fit in the church, and it was like a battle of the bands. The best choir wins.
Wow.
And I was invited, and my crew did great, and we get back, and George calls me and tells me Dad's died, and that he's gonna get a ticket, and he wants to hopefully get me in before he's gone, and that they've brought him home. And I go to sleep, in this room where I'm sleeping with 90 women with the rain dripping on us too, but we're not under a bridge. And I go to sleep in this shelter, and immediately I'm on Nantucket, and I'm out on the moors, and I'm riding a buckboard.
Wow.
Just up on a rough seat, and I got all the buckboard rattling behind me, kind of, and the wheels are up.
A buckboard is an old. It's on an old.
An old wooden kind
Yeah.
of thing with wheels. Well, you say wooden wheels, but they did have metal around them and wooden spokes.
The horse was pulling it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, and I had the rein, and I looked right at me, and Dad's right there.
Wow.
And we're riding along. Dad loved the part out like by he liked the western, the Mattakit, the wild part of the island, where I could get us on sandy roads, and we'd whip along where there were no other people. Like I had this Buick Special when Dad really loved to visit, and I could really roll. I knew how to handle the sand and everything. So we were like, he's sitting right by me like that, like we were in my Buick, but it was this buckboard and this horse. And the horse was doing pretty good too, and we're rolling, and we cut to a gate, and I was driving right. I said, Dad, get down and open the gate. He goes, no, Kerry, I'll drive. You get down and open the gate. I'm like, okay. I got down and opened the gate. I turned around and he was gone. I woke up and I went and, I never got to talk to Dad again. He died as I pulled in the driveway. He was gone. Hobie, now, so Dad, I haven't, cried or said, please, could I see my dad in my dreams?
Right.
Hobie, I did.
Yeah.
Did I tell you how Hobie came to me in a dream?
I don't think so.
Oh, you're going to love it. It's so Hobie. I prayed, on and on and on. I got to say goodbye to Hobie. I'd been on Nantucket again. Even then, even though I hadn't lived there, I'd been asked there to sing at a wedding. So I was stuck there when she died, right? I fall asleep. It was about 3 months after she died. I kept, every night I go to sleep, I said, let Hobie come at least talk to me about this. So I fall asleep. Well, immediately, everything is so bright, white light, I couldn't believe it. Bright, bright lights. And I realize I'm in a huge airport, and I'm on one of those walking sidewalks. And I'm all alone, except for there's a lady coming right at the end where they're coming from the other direction of the airport. And as we're coming along, I see this big smile, and I realize it's Hobie. And she goes, hi, as we roll by one. Hi, I heard you wanted to see me. And I said, well, yeah, Mom, I wanted to say goodbye. She says, get on with your life, honey, I'm fine.
Wow.
She just rolled out of view, and I woke up. And I did feel real good. It felt very, very real to me and very well planned by my mother.
That's pretty
let's
good.
not get all touchy-feely and emotional.
That's pretty good.
So why I like Valiant Thor? I didn't get to the Geneva part before I really let you wrap it up.
Sure, please.
See, I love it that Valiant Thor and his crew from the Galactic Federation of people that really felt an impulse towards Earth decided, well, yes, the White Hats and the Alliance and all the Patriots and all the people on the street and all the real loving humans on Earth that still have hearts, yes, they want a better world, but you know what? We do need help at this point with the otherworldly beings, the demonic entities, and a lot of the reptilians that are deep underground that have never surfaced, that are just sucking up millions of children a year. Now, see, the reason that people can't, like, swallow these numbers, and other people explain it, is that they take unregistered children, they take refugees. It was one of the actual reasons for so many covert and strange wars that really seemed to have no point, that just went on and on endlessly. Well, the amount of volatility on the ground that creates, like in Haiti now, where you could just sweep tons of children away. So Valiant Source thing is, the numbers were up to 8 million a year, and we don't think there's many Americans that really can comprehend that this is actually happening, because they've been debt slaves, they've been worked to death, their environment and their food have been tainted. They've just gone through this pandemic. As the pandemic went on, so did the child trafficking as the borders got open, not only in the United States. People keep talking about our borders. All the borders in Europe and many, many borders around the world have been open wide that were not, with people going through, and many people don't realize it has not only been to allow people the freedom to go places and make money and live a better life. It has been to create an armed insurgency. Barack Obama spoke about this again and again, that to get what he wanted and to create the kind of America that he saw and his people out of Chicago, and the Lou, I think his name's Alinsky, or is it Saul Alinsky? Saulynnsky. Saul Alinsky. He was a real promoter of this plan, multi-generational. They hope to do it in 3 to 4 generations. That Barack has been a part of. That these closed borders have been keeping people from having access to the wealth that others have, and to resources, and to a better life, when in fact it's been a huge tool of human trafficking. See, I, as a person, I wish I hadn't lived to see marijuana get classified as a drug, and it had been allowed to stay in the herbal pharmacology, because once it was classified and treated right up there with, well, some people compare it to fentanyl and heroin, when there's absolutely no comparison. And these are the drugs that when someone like me talks about drug trafficking, I'm not even that worried about heroin. I mean, because I've known many lifetime heroin addicts. They function through life with it. If you can set up the right life, it can be a functional thing. But fentanyl kills. There's no chance, and so much of it's being pumped in here now. So that's a part of it, but it's especially the children. Okay, so Valiant Thor, his latest missive was, they had been very, very busy in Israel, underground in Gaza, that people didn't realize the huge Hamas organization was yet another U.S. Inc., NATO, CIA funded organization of multiple layers of dumbs, massive child trafficking enclave in the Middle East, and the taste in many. If you think about the Saudis have developed very expensive tastes over the years. Maybe things are changing, but what I've heard was they became big users of adrenochrome. This is why now, to your people, I'll move away from Valiant.
What about
Thor,
the CERN?
so
What about that big CERN portal?
okay, so we should go to Geneva.
What about the CERN portal? So
pretty much the Valiant Thor's last thing was, we're finishing up under Gaza and in Israel, because that was one of the big sources. They started at the Vatican, okay? He said, me and my people, and that's the Venusians, are moving up into Geneva soon, because we have a real problem, very, very deep layers. We think it might go as many as 18 or in the 20s cities under there. He said, and many of you see, people have been wondering, well, where did all the elites go? You know, they haven't all been executed. A lot of them have disappeared. They've all disappeared into their bunkers and underground facilities. And people like Valiant Thor and their crew want to root them out. And the reptilians that they're feeding, and all the ways that they're keeping this. You see, the adrenochrome harvesting, they set down several labs in LA.
Really?
They shut down one in Rochester, New York,
Wow.
right by an airport. The way they're set up is it's like a huge Quonset hut sometimes, or an abandoned warehouse. They get a bunch of like med students or interns to monitor the beings, the human beings. It's specifically children, and that's because of children's adrenaline systems. Okay? So you don't find, they're not taking people like you or me, no matter how good your blood is,
Right.
to make adrenochrome. Because you're not producing the kind of it.
What's going on at CERN? What's the CERN portal?
Oh! Well, and you know, they've been exploding, going further and further with exploding atoms and molecules, and yeah, there's all, and that's, now you're talking about the dimensions. Okay, if you want to get a really good teacher about that, a guy that has a whiteboard that comes from the UK, and he brings you all the way from the start to the finish, his focus has been all the other dimensions, all the different portals, and all the ways demonic entities, and you see Valiant Thor will talk about this too. There are certain demonic entities, they can't just wipe out. They have to move them to other dimensions. And then, kind of like Pandora's box was supposedly, Pandora's box, the myth of it, of someone opening the lid, well, supposedly, that's a dimensional world, you see. Because this has happened before.
Right.
It happened in Russia. Russia had to drive out the Khazars. The Khazars were engaged in human sacrifice. They did blood ritual, especially with children, and they were known cannibals. Now, I notice you don't talk about cannibalism, and it's probably good if you're not ready to get into that. But you see, that's what really did it for people like Valiant Thor.
Oh, yeah.
Once people on Earth have started eating other humans, you know that the human race is going to break down. There has to be something.
What do you think about Elon? Something what?
There has to be some power that breaks that apart and really smashes it. And Valiant Thor's thing is, we have dimensional pods. We have another planet for some of them, and we have ways. They're not going to be entombed.
Has there been a lot of other Earths before? Do you think? It's hard to say.
Well, let's talk about the geoforming of Earth. I don't think other Earths in terms of the rock. But if you think in terms of geoforming, like, let's face it, look, any of the Jules Verne stuff, Journey to the Center of the Earth, right? Supposedly, once you get into these domes, I bet you'd love to get a trip down into the domes.
Yeah, Dulce, New Mexico. We should go there. What happened when you went to Area 51? You see anything noteworthy?
Well, I got way beyond the restrictions.
You got farther than Bob Lazar.
Oh my God, I was way out of, I was trying to get out on the plane, the area where the thing had crashed. So I had to kind of keep, my God, I spent almost a tank of gas going around the fringes, because they had no trespassing signs and no permit. You can't go in here. And I finally wiggled my way in, and then, I mean, it shocked the hell out of me. He wasn't just the trooper, it was his truck. And it just appeared and disappeared. I was like, Jesus fucking Christ. But I had spent, before I wobbled my way up into that spot, I'd stopped at the big cafe they've got a wonderful billboard out. And it's like, welcome to Area 51. But they have a UFO museum inside. And a lot of...
we should have gone a couple years ago. All those people stormed the gate. We probably should have gone. But Skinwalker Ranch has a lot of stuff going on, and that's
well,
a private
you see,
place.
now Skinwalker Ranch. Here's
They
the
might let
thing.
us go there.
You see, but you see, now here's the thing. This is what I kind of wanted to get into. And
Mhm.
don't let me keep getting off the course. See, when I was talking about the right hand and the left hand, Atlantis,
Right.
the way it was unified to be good for humanity, and the way it splits, and the right hand, like Rosicrucians, and there's all kinds of entities, like the Alliance, all kinds of entities. The Golden Dragon Society in China, that are trying to do this right hand thing for the world and either pull the left hand dark guys back into the light.
Mhm.
Be like, we'll contain you and re-educate you. You really don't want to be this demonic. Or we'll contain you. You have to leave Earth.
Right.
So we could get back to this bright, powerful energy that could do so much.
Right.
It could, in other words, it could terraform Earth in probably 2 weeks instead of 20 years, Griff.
Now, do you think these high-level demonic things can they be turned back to the good team? Is anything
Well, you
ever?
see,
Do they
that's kind of the point of Rosicrucianism.
Right.
That's what the Rosicrucians were saying to me. They were saying there are many brilliant people that we love and know and are related to, but this destruction plan has been planned for generations, and they're all on board.
Well, it's all about.
And it's been cast in a way that seems very good for the few. It's kind of like, look, you know how they set up those tests in college. Look, if you knew your $10 could keep this one person alive
Right.
for 2 days, or keep these 5 people alive for just 3 hours, what would you do?
Yeah.
You know, that's the whole mindset you get into when the elite starts talking about we need to remove 90% of humanity.
You think the
Don't we want
how
equality?
are the Rosicrucians an old group? Do they go a bit far back? Have you done a lot of research
Well,
on
they
them?
go back. They come out of the hospital. Yes, I have, because they come out of the Crusades.
Okay.
The Crusades, the Hospitallers, the Let me think of another group.
Because I imagine after you met them, how did you know that was them? Did they tell you their name?
Yes, they said we are the Rosicrucian chapter of the East Coast,
Wow.
and we've brought you here because we need to teach you something, and then we're going to protect you.
And you didn't recognize any of them?
No. Well, let me tell you, Lee had to get me in the house kicking and fighting. We
Yeah.
pulled up. We went through some territory I thought we'd see ghosts in. It was so like dead.
Weird.
You know where, and it wasn't at the time of the year where stuff is dead. It was like very spooky. A lot of scrub, a lot of kind of small trickling creeks.
You never heard from them again?
Winding, rocky.
After that meeting, you never really heard from them.
And I have tried to even, I've looked into a lot of it.
But maybe they just.
Turned into a big thing in LA, like a movement, but who knows?
What do you mean, a movement?
Well, you could pay a lot of money and join the Rosicrucian Society, and they send you literature, and then finally they move you through the phases. But it's become, to me, it looks, when I read about it, because I thought about contacting them, it looks like it's turned into another one of those Christian Scientists. Or,
What about Bohemian Grove?
oh, come on.
What's going on there?
Everything is breaking wide open about that.
Yeah.
Who was it? It was just, finally the kids are sharing with each other pictures on TikTok
Of Bohemian Grove.
of all the old guys lined up out of their robes and hoods. They got the idea for the Ku Klux Klan from Bohemian Grove.
Oh, wow.
That's why they decided, the Ku Klux Klan has been like a political.
I think for us, I think we could have a shot at Skinwalker Ranch.
That's what I want to
The
get.
government is not involved so much. I'm sure they're involved, but I think that's.
But what it is you're dealing with totally demonic energy there.
Okay,
See, shapeshifters.
Right.
Well, this is what, because
Shapeshifters, natives.
I'm gonna make together a little stack of books tonight for you to bring to Austin with you.
Okay.
Keep them as long as you want, or pass them on. But of stuff that we're talking about this,
Okay.
so you'll have something to really look at.
So
But
Skinwalker.
here's what I want to get across
Yeah.
to you: shapeshifters, werewolves,
Uh,
vampires,
yeah.
abominable snowman or yeti or Bigfoot that attack. Because you have to understand, there are good spirits and bad spirits.
Right.
There are benign, abominable. There are stories about families of yeti that have rescued hikers.
Yeah.
There are more and more. Once you get on There's a good site.
So
This
werewolf.
guy that lives up in Alaska has a great, good Bigfoot site.
What about chupacabras?
Those are all the demonic entities.
Shapeshifters.
Yes,
So
they rip.
are those aliens?
Well, no, they're shapeshifters. That's what I'm trying to tell you. They're interdimensional beings.
Okay.
This is absolutely why the Bigfoot. It's ridiculous to think they're going to find forensic evidence on Bigfoot.
Right.
Bigfoot can do almost anything.
Right.
You see, if you think in terms of well, demonic beings. Here's the thing. If we think of angels and everything we've been told an angel can do,
Right.
angels are more limited. They're following God's rules or the Creator's rules
Right.
or the rules of there shall be no one over me. I'm the all-knowing, the omnipotent. Now, this is not a creationist view. It's more the view of the ultimate source of power. There's this ultimate source. And if you follow that down, well, then angels, or like I think of guiding spirits, channels, like that Sicilian guy in my cab.
Right.
Because, I mean, I got to tell you the rest of that story another time.
Oh yeah.
I mean, all the stuff that he, like, brought into my life, my awareness that somebody could read.
He was a big guru for you. Wow.
But that he could have the two people I loved most in the world as a child right then come in. Because it wasn't to just come in and say hi. I had been very worried about Jake.
Wow.
And very worried about my bass player. She was a wonderful girl and she was going through a lot.
And they both came in and said hi.
Oh, and they told me they answered the questions I'd been worried about.
Even though they were alive, their spirits came in.
Oh, no, they didn't know the things I'd been worried about for them.
Right.
Well, the guy says to me, he says...
He answered the questions for them.
He says to me, he says, MG, he says MG with the girl. He goes, oh my gosh. He goes, there's almost no room. Can you see them? He says, yellow roses now everywhere. Yellow roses. Why? He goes, this is your other guardian angel. She says her initials are MG. Now, my godmother, Mary Griffin, my auntie Mary, my mother's older sister. I just loved her, and I was told I looked like her a lot. And he says, oh, and she's so pleased. You look so much like her when she was a girl. And they want you to know they love you. Still have your dimples, Kerry. The guy hadn't looked at me, and I hadn't been smiling at him. And he says, and they want you to know you didn't realize. And he started listing off the car wrecks I had.
Wow.
And he said, do you remember that wreck? He said they were there.
Wow.
Do you remember this one? And then I had some close calls in some clubs I was playing in as a young... Like, I played in Athens, Georgia before REM did, you know? I played in a club they opened up because I was with this group and this fiddler, and they brought me right into that. Athens was a great rock scene.
I love REM, one of my favorites.
It was a great rock scene. But anyway,
Wow.
He's like, do you remember when you were there in Athens, Georgia? Do you remember this club in Mobile? Do you remember? And he's like, he says, they are so proud of you. They were listening, and he says, and they just want to tell you they're so thrilled you still got that beautiful chestnut-colored hair.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh my God.
Who was there?
So it was my grandfather, Michael Griffin, and my mother's big sister,
that's pretty cool.
Mary Griffin, my aunt, who died when I was very young.
Did you ever meet this guy again?
No, but here's what happened when he says that, and then he sinks back, he collapses on me.
In the car. Yeah.
And I pulled him up, got him home, and I walked him out to his door. He was kind of like shaky and looking a little pale. So I stood there with him for a minute, and I was like, oh, you okay? He was quiet as the grave. And he says, I had a clairvoyant episode. Are you all right? And I said, yeah.
Wow.
He said, did I say anything relevant that meant anything to you?
Wow.
And I said, everything. I said, I can't believe how it rests. You answer questions I've been praying for answers to, very specific.
Wow.
Named that about my son, mentioned my son, what he was doing, where he was.
That's a real medium when you black out like that.
So, That's what he says to me now.
Yeah.
Because I didn't tell you when he came out of his cancer treatment. Oh, my heart broke for him. I knew the guy was a smoker.
Yeah.
And I smoke when people smoke. But they had me sign all kinds of regs. They were going nuts on you smoking in vehicles in Florida then. So he gets in the car and he says, "Can I smoke?"
Uh-huh.
I said, "Jesus, I just signed all these."
Yeah.
I said, "I'll lose my job." He goes, "It's okay, it's okay." And I saw this huge tree up the road. I pull up under it.
Yeah.
And we get out. I got him right. I was like, "Come on, let's get out and smoke." And we're standing under it.
You wanted to smoke. As soon as he mentioned smoking,
Are you kidding me? But I wanted him to have a smoke, honey. I've been a nurse.
Yeah.
When you go through a cancer treatment, you feel like hell.
Yeah.
You're just so wiped out, and if you love to smoke, you need to smoke right then. So, he goes to light my cigarette, and he jumps back from me like he just saw a ghost. Literally jumps back in the grass under this tree. And then he smiles at me, and he starts puffing, and I puff. And I decide, whatever, I don't know this guy. So, flashback to being at his house where he says, I think I had a clairvoyant episode. He goes, "Let me tell you what happened. As a kid in Sicily, I used to have these episodes." He said, "First I would get what I think would be a blinding headache, and I'd pass out, and when I come to, everybody be annoyed or upset with me. And they tell me I had no business telling their secrets and knowing what I knew about them." He said, "So my mother and grandmother trained me to suppress this." And he said, "And I got violent migraine headaches instead. But it was better than having those episodes." He said, "But you know what happened when I lit your cigarette?" And I'm standing there and I'm like, "What happened?" He goes, "All this white light poured out of you."
Wow.
He said, "It just blinded me." He said, "I must have." I was like, "Yeah, I was like, I kept thinking you're going to die on me, all these phenomenal stuff." He goes, "All this white light poured out." She goes, "I knew I could just relax and tell you you were supposed to hear this."
Wow.
I was like, "Oh, I wrote a great song about it." I managed to mostly tell the whole story in a good song and make all the words rhyme. Because I think it's one of my favorite stories, because to me it really proves
He was, the power of the.
there's this other world,
Yeah. So what after he passed out? He had his, and then you dropped him off somewhere, and that was it.
I dropped him off, but he told me that about, I don't indulge in this. I'd usually rather have a headache, but when that light poured out of you, I was like, I could tell this lady anything. He said, "White light poured out of you."
Wow.
Actually, how much later was it? Because I'm what they call an empath. I pick up a lot of vibration and stuff and feelings from people. I would be classed that way as an empath. I'm very sympathetic. That's another ability we all have. But I've really developed it, and I think it was from, I was surrounded by children that were in terrible shape while I was developing as an infant. And I think that developed these abilities. But anyway, when you have those abilities, it puts you by the way of, even if you get like that experience with him, I was totally open and clear again. Like my demons, I wasn't having bad nights of sleep, I wasn't worried, I wasn't anxious. And it was like having, like the way, a good acid trip, I think it's great. A good one set up right. For like a year, you could feel like, I'm seeing the real world all the time. You don't get caught up in stuff, you're fully present. I love that. But, so it was about how many years later? It was 98 when I was with this Sicilian nurse, running him up to Tampa, and it was 13 at the ashram in Salt Springs, Florida, when the guru told me, "I think you got a lot of demonic or spiritual stuff hanging around your aura. So I'm going to put you with a very special therapist I have. She's going to work on your body and just take them all out." And I was like, and he goes, "Kerry, I think you're going to feel great after this. Just let her do her work." And so I did. I was new to the place, and he said it was a special gift from him. And I really liked him. He was the Kripalu yoga there. He was the guy that set up Kripalu. I'm right this side. But anyway, she puts me on this table. Speaking of the white light, right? So here I going around for years. When you're driving a cab, let me tell you something. If you shut up, you make great tips by almost everybody on a long run. It's the rarest thing in the world to have a captive audience looking ahead, and you get to just tell your life story of what's wearing you. I heard so many people's sad stories, and just was like, oh. So I had a lot of that. So she says, Guru Dev said he just saw them all around your aura. Just so many hanging around. Some demonic, just some painful, bad memory ghosts that can't leave. You're just riddled with them. So we're going to get them out of you, Kerry. And I was like, okay, I'm going with this. I want to be around you people. And if you're seeing this, you'll feel better around me. See, there's a skeptic in me again. I didn't jump into this with this lady. Her name was Ganja, which I thought was kind of cool. She's a kind of old lady dressed in purple, but big and strong, like I'll probably be even in 10 years. So she gets me on the table, and she just starts doing it's very like a kind of a firm Reiki massage, where you're trying to get kind of a magnetism thing, but she was touching me. Well, I went right down now. She shakes me awake. She goes, my God. She goes, God, Kerry, she says, the guru was right. She said, it's taken me hours to get all that stuff out of you. She said, you should have seen this room. Entities were just pouring out. And I was like, well, what time is it? She's like, hey, she had spent 5 hours. Just like, and she said that more would, and she said, some said that, she said, the impression I got, because she said, what a learning experience. When you draw someone else's sympathetic elements, or once they've drawn in,
And
a lot of your female women family members from past generations.
Powerful.
You had to they thought that they were protecting you, and they were making your life miserable. And I want to tell you, I did float off that table. See, so I'm into all this now. Holographic, I wish you'd look into that. If you ever have an injury, to me, it's one of the vital steps. It's better than a med bed.
Yeah, holographic, what is it?
Holographic repatterning.
Wow.
But you have to be able to visualize.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't work. But I would think you could
Well,
visualize like this.
yeah.
You see, the idea is if you're in any pain,
Yeah.
and it's not directly related to trauma.
Right. Okay.
You didn't just fall and sprain your wrist.
Right.
But your wrist is hurt. Or you got a toothache out of nowhere. For people like me, an empath or a sympathetic person, most of my pain and illness is always psychosomatic. It always comes in on a psychic or emotional level. Like I'll pick up other people's pain.
Right.
Anyway, holographic repatterning. You have to identify there's some unfinished work with an individual, maybe even from another life, if you get introduced in a dream or you have an idea of it. Or like say, you were told by a channeler or someone that picked up on your past lives that you may have been a seal hunter in Alaska. Well, hunting seals is violent. And even though we love the idea that Indians have this prayer ritual, still sometimes even the taking of a life thoughtlessly or violent can actually create karmic debt. That can actually turn into pain. It's very interesting. That's where resonance comes in. You see, if an individual, that's one of the reasons I'm so determined to get it all figured out now. I don't really want to come back in another life here and work out more karma. I'm kind of done grip.
Yeah.
I'd really much rather inhabit another planet or be another kind of being.
So the holographic healing, you could do it. You just visualize.
Oh yeah, okay. So you must visualize, and what you say is very important. It's always with another human being. Well, no, it may be with an animal, but usually, like I was taught for humans. So for me, I started, and my coach taught me, you're probably carrying something from your father's mother, who you never met, and your mother's mother, who you never met, who both suffered greatly in their lives and at the end of their lives. So we need you to, even if you may not know, like none of us have a picture of Dad's mom, but I know her story because I got into mental health very early, like Meg was banging her head on the sidewalk as a kid, not walls
Uh-huh.
all the time. She was always bruised, and I was like really into mental health. So, um, this aspect of our lives, though, where you get someone in your unconscious that you're reliving their their karmic debt or their karmic journey, well, you got to get them out. There's a reason that you maybe keep meeting other people, someone like me that you're not compatible with, or you're hooked up and you don't know why you're suddenly responsible, or like with my sister Susan, every time I was running around, I was being blamed for something Susan had thought of that I did, and I was like, so I had to march all these people in front of me. First, it was my grandmother had been thrown. My father told me I was such a wild, crazy woman, I might get locked up in an asylum like his mother had. So I got her in front of me first, and my coach said, just give a shape, you don't know what she looked like, but talk to her, you know who she was. And I was like, Grandma, I know your name. I said her name. I said, look, I never knew you, but I love you, but I'm not going to carry you for the rest of my life. I'm letting you go. Well, my coach stayed in another room for 12 hours while I did that.
Wow.
Because, I've traveled a lot. And there are a lot of people, and you see, trauma pain gets created, or it's held in the body as if it were trauma pain. It gets created by the conscience hurting in recognition that a fellow human has been hurt, or a helpless animal or child. That gets translated as pain. People who have chronic pain that are on painkillers, that the doctors have set the bone and stitched it up, it's all healed, it still hurts, doctor. They better go examine their conscience. Because you got
Psychosomatic, you said it.
or let these people go. So
The mind controls the body, right?
Griffin, I was in so much pain, and when I stood up and floated out of that room, I had to let so many people go.
Yeah.
And then I was so surprised. Because you see, I can't do drugs for pain.
No.
I'll do a little coffee.
Keep it herbal.
But I was so surprised when I went back to Vermont, because all this happened on the Cape, and I just had a little interaction with Susan or my mother, and I got a really bad headache. And I called the therapist, the coach that had taught me all this, and I said, hey, look, this doesn't work. I'm sitting here, I'm in pain again. She goes, you just have a fight or a problem with somebody? I was like, yeah. She goes, well, go figure it out, and...
So I've learned a lot about back pain. With people, a lot of the back pain.
Or neck, right? You're a pain in the neck, right?
Yeah.
So let me walk you to the door.
All right, yeah. Thank you, Kerry. You dominated.
Get a light on. Put that light on so you can see when you're going out.
We'll be back tomorrow. Maybe we'll get some Nature Boy.
That'll be great. I would love that. And then